Chapter 804. Master, you will always be my master. You will never change. Even if I leave, I will still be a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect. This will not change because of anything. Fan Qingyu said. She respected her master, Fairy Luohua, very much. She also knew that the reason why she could reach the immortal cultivation realm and her physique was naturally compatible with the Great Way was because of her master's cultivation and the many treasures in the Celestial Spirit sect. Naturally, she knew how to be grateful. She also felt grateful in her heart. Therefore, even if she had decided to be with Ziyue, she would not give up her identity as the disciple of Fairy Luohua and a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect. Good. My years of teaching you were not in vain. Fairy Luohua's face suddenly showed a gratified expression. Zhou Gutong also showed a trace of satisfaction on his face. As an expert of the Supreme Realm, he knew the importance of the friendship of an expert of the Supreme Realm. Even if Fan Qingyu was not an expert of the Supreme Realm, she could influence Ziyue, whose strength had reached the level of the Supreme Realm and whose future potential would be even more amazing. That was enough. The Celestial Spirit sect's efforts in the past were not in vain. In that case, thank you very much. Ziyue did not think too much. He just saluted Zhou Gutong and Fairy Luohua respectively. Then, as if he had thought of something, he frowned and asked, "How much does Master Zhou know about the current situation in the ancient Barren Domain?" After all, he was born in the ancient Barren Domain. Thousands of years ago, the ancient Barren Domain was one of the holy lands of immortal cultivation, which was not inferior to the firmament territory. It was rich in resources and countless experts. He naturally wanted to know more about the desolation and misery of the ancient Barren Domain. You want to ask about the ancient Barren Domain's destruction, the loss of spiritual qi, and the immortal cultivation desert, right? Zhou Gutong asked. Seeing Ziyue nod, his face became more serious. He said with a faint look in his eyes, "All of this is actually related to the arrival of the immortals 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago there was a sudden change in the world. A 10,000-mile-long hole was torn open in the sky above the ancient barren region. There seemed to be a flash of light. Then, 7 powerful cultivators from another world crushed the barrier of the astral world and stepped into our astral world. At that time, there were also spirit-severing stage powerhouses in our astral boundary. We learned from them that each of the 7 powerhouses was at an earth-shattering level. Even the weakest of them had gone far in the immortal Tao realm. It was equivalent to the difference between an early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator and a late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. In fact, the difference was even greater because of the difference in strength. At the very least, the spirit-severing stage cultivator had said that any one of the 7 cultivators could easily crush him. As for the strongest one, he had even touched upon the next realm of the immortal Tao. He had reached the realm of the fusion of spirit and flesh, the fusion of flesh and spirit, and the fusion of spirit and heaven. He could be called a peerless true immortal, and every move of his contained great power. These 7 experts did not care about any of the cultivators in the star boundary. For some reason, a shocking battle broke out in the ancient desolate region. That battle was extremely short. It only took an hour from start to finish. The consequences were extremely terrifying. The entire ancient desolate region was shattered. Countless cultivators and billions of living beings all died in the natural disaster. Even the pure Yang Sword sect, the top immortal sect in the ancient desolate region, sank and was destroyed. There was also a spirit-severing stage powerhouse in the pure Yang Sword sect, who was easily killed and fell together with the pure Yang Sword sect. As he spoke, Zhou Gutong's face was filled with emotion. This could indeed be considered a natural disaster. The 7 true immortals above the late-stage spirit-severing stage had shocking strength. Every move of theirs had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. It was also because the battle had broken out in the ancient desolate region. If it had been in the firmament territory, their heavenly spirit sect would not have been able to escape the fate of destruction. Therefore, most of the cultivators who knew about this felt sympathy and shock for the ancient desolate region. The arrival of the 7 true immortals caused a great battle that blew up the entire ancient desolate region? Ziyue was stunned and somewhat stunned. Although he had long known that there must be another reason for the change in the ancient desolate region, or perhaps it was related to the fierce battle between some experts. However, he never would have thought that the real reason was because 7 top true immortals had fought a great battle. That was why such a side drum had been triggered, causing the entire ancient desolate region to almost sink. Then what happened to the 7 true immortals? After a long while, Ziyue asked with an inexplicable expression. Although that great battle was short, the consequences were too shocking. Of the 7 true immortals, some of them naturally died because of this, forming a huge immortal graveyard. However, we have no way of knowing how many of them died and who survived. However, ever since that great battle, we have never heard of any traces of true immortals appearing. Some people said that the victor did not pay attention to the cultivators of the star boundary and directly left. Some people also said that the 7 true immortals perished together in that great battle. Some people even said that the catastrophe caused by that great battle was too great, causing the will of the star boundary to be dissatisfied. Therefore, the will of the star boundary awakened and directly suppressed them. I am inclined to believe that some of them must still be alive and have not left. They are still in the star boundary. Zhou Gutong's words were shocking. Still in the star boundary? Ziyue was shocked. He suddenly thought of the endless astral winds in the astral wind canyon, the void barrier in front of the 100,000 mountains, and the sea vortex that appeared out of nowhere in the endless sea region. Which one of them did not require earth-shattering means to set up? At least, with his current strength and means, it was impossible for him to do this. Even if he forced his way in, he might not have much confidence. Then this time, is the great calamity of the star boundary that they are talking about related to these true immortals? When exactly will the great calamity of the star boundary descend? Ziyue quickly asked. Maybe it is related, maybe it is not. No one can clearly see this point. After all, those true immortals have not shown any signs of appearing until now. As for when exactly will the great calamity of the star boundary descend? As Zhou Gutong spoke, a solemn expression appeared on his face. He continued, the great calamity has actually already descended. It is just that it has not erupted on a large scale. The great calamity of the star boundary this time is actually similar to the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons tens of thousands of years ago. It is just that tens of thousands of years ago, the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons was by the help of the void turbulence and teleporting through the starry sky. The number of extraterrestrial demons that descended was relatively small, and there were also not many top spirit severing stage mighty immortals. But even so, that great calamity also caused great damage to the star boundary. The top ancient clans, the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan, were annihilated one after another, and several top immortal cultivation sects were ruined because of this and lost their inheritance. And this time, for some unknown reason, the star boundary and the demon realm where the extraterrestrial demons were located gradually became close to each other. The two worlds began to collide, causing some connection points between the two worlds to appear. Cultivators from both sides could use the connection points to step into the other world. Now, in the northern part of the purple-green mountains of the Firmament Territory, Mount Heng of the True Law Territory, and the Sky Demon Territory, especially the Sky Demon Territory, it is said that there are 3 connection points that have appeared. Although the strength of the cultivators entering and exiting the connection points is relatively weak, as time passes, the space of the connection points has actually been expanding. It is said that in the Sky Demon Territory, There are already deity realm extraterrestrial demons that have stepped into the star boundary through the connection points. Moreover, it is hard to guarantee that there are still unknown connection points that have not been discovered. Once there is a connection point that can allow the primordial spirit realm, or even the spirit severing stage to appear, it will definitely be a great calamity for the star boundary. You should know that the territory of the demon realm is 10 times that of the star boundary, and the number of experts there is more than several times that of the star boundary. It is said that the number of spirit severing stage mighty immortals is more than 20. Among them, there are even intermediate spirit severing stage mighty immortals, and even advanced spirit severing stage mighty immortals. Zhou Gutong said with a solemn expression. Hearing this, Ziyue's expression also changed. He had only glimpsed the strength of the demon realm from the great battle tens of thousands of years ago. If the entire demon realm was really connected to the star boundary, with the ferocity of the extraterrestrial demons and the terrifying strength of the extraterrestrial demons, the star boundary would definitely suffer unimaginable damage. The entire human race's immortal spell forces would even sink because of this. I didn't expect that there would be such a hidden danger in the seemingly peaceful immortal spell world. Then, according to Sect Master Zhou's judgment, when will the connection points of the star boundary reach the point where primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals can step into each other? Ziyue naturally knew that ordinary extraterrestrial demons that stepped into the star boundary could not pose a threat to the entire star boundary. After all, although the overall strength of the star boundary was weaker than that of the demon realm, there were many top experts. With the current strength of the connection points of the star boundary, any primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals could suppress everything. Even if the extraterrestrial demons really stepped into the star boundary, they would not be able to escape the misfortune of being turned into ashes. However, the connection points of the star boundary were constantly expanding. Naturally, the strength of the extraterrestrial demons that could step into the star boundary would also continue to increase. Once a primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals stepped into the star boundary, the impact would be too great. An endless stream of primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals would be enough to give any immortal spell forces a headache. 3 years, at most 3 years. If there are any unforeseen circumstances during this period, primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals will step into the star boundary in less than 3 years. In fact, this was also the reason why the Thousand Phenomena sect could not wait to promote Situ Zheng as the youth leader. This was because such a young expert's campaign could gather the forces of the world and would be supported by the endless fate of the star boundary. It would bring unimaginable benefits to the future cultivation and opportunities of the immortal spell cultivators. Now, all of this has been stopped by you, and it has fallen on you. Perhaps the hope of the entire star boundary really has to fall on you, fellow Taoist. If you are willing, I am willing to recommend you as the youth leader of the Firmament Territory in the name of the Celestial Spirit Sect. You will lead the many young cultivators in the Firmament Territory to guard the connection points of the Indigo Mountains. As Zhou Gutong spoke, he looked at Ziyue with admiration. Indeed, he sincerely hoped that he could recommend Ziyue to accept this position. As an initial primordial spirit severing stage mighty immortals, Zhou Gutong had unlimited potential and astonishing battle strength. In his opinion, there was no one more suitable than Zhou Gutong. Although Ziyue was not from the Celestial Spirit Sect, it was still a fact that he had a close relationship with the Celestial Spirit Sect. If Zhou Gutong really relied on the fate of the star boundary to become an immortal spell mighty immortal expert, he might be able to protect the Celestial Spirit Sect. 3 years? Ziyue frowned. Time was a little tight. Then, he shook his head and hurriedly said, I appreciate sect leader Zhou's kindness. However, I don't care about the youth leader position. Perhaps if I become the youth leader, I will indeed be blessed by the fate of the star boundary and my cultivation will be much smoother. However, we cultivators go against the will of the heavens. If we really fall to the point where we need to rely on the fate of the star boundary to have the confidence to advance bravely and reach a higher level, we will lose our original desire to seek the Tao. This is something that I will not take. I am more willing to rely on my own efforts to cultivate and tread on the heavens to reach the peak. Good ambition. Zhou Gutong was shocked when he heard this. In the end, he let out a long sigh and said, "Perhaps only such lofty aspirations can create such monstrous talent." Fairy Luohua, Fan Qingyu, and the others at the side also looked at Ziyue with admiration and admiration. Zhou Gutong gave up the opportunity to become an immortal spell-mighty immortal expert and strive to tread on the heavens with his own strength and cultivate in adversity. It was really admirable. You flatter me. Ziyue smiled, but he felt a little bitter. He actually just did not want to trouble himself. As for relying on his own efforts to cultivate and tread on the heavens, it was purely because he had the attribute panel. He was not like ordinary cultivators who needed to cultivate painstakingly and spend a lot of time. As long as he had sufficient spiritual energy, he could naturally use the power of the attribute panel to rapidly increase his strength. In fact, even at this very moment, he still had about 2 billion spiritual energy left. If he wanted to, he could use the attribute panel to directly raise his immortal technique realm to the peak of the early stage primordial soul realm, or even the mid-stage primordial soul realm. However, he did not do so because it would be too shocking and cause the surrounding cultivators to notice that something was wrong. By the way, since there are more than 20 spirit-severing stage mighty immortals in the demon realm, how many spirit-severing stage mighty immortals are there in the astral realm? Ziyue asked curiously. Not a single one. Zhou Gutong shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "The resources in the astral realm are still sufficient for us primordial soul realm cultivators, but for spirit-severing stage mighty immortals, it is a little lacking. It is not like the demon realm, where there are enough treasures to provide for spirit-severing stage mighty immortals to cultivate and improve. In addition to the natural rejection of the astral realm, spirit-severing stage mighty immortals in the astral realm usually leave the astral realm soon after breaking through to the outer realm to explore the mysteries. There are very few who can stay in the astral realm. Moreover, they can only stay for 1,000 years at most. After 1,000 years, they will definitely be rejected by the astral realm and expelled." Chapter 805. Will they be expelled after 1,000 years? Ziyue thought about the extraterritorial demon in the Dragon Palace and the 7 genuine immortals mentioned by Zhou Gutong. Are they not bound by heaven and earth? Maybe there are some reasons that I don't know. He took the opportunity to bring it up. However, although Zhou Gutong's status and strength were extraordinary, he didn't know much about things that involved the spirit-severing realm, so he couldn't say anything. He could only guess that the extraterritorial demon might have escaped the detection of the will of the star realm because of its serious injury and its mysterious aura. As for the genuine immortal, it was very likely that he had other means to avoid detection. Subsequently, seeing that this was a rare opportunity, Bai Ziyue and Zhou Gutong took the opportunity to sit down and discuss. They explained their understanding of the laws of the world. Both of them felt that they had gained a lot, especially some of Ziyue's views. Because they were obtained directly through the attribute panel and he had the inheritance of the 3 spirit-severing stage experts, his foundation was even more profound than Zhou Gutong's. Zhou Gutong's eyes lit up and he felt that he had gained something. He was very excited. Fan Qingyu, Fairy Luohua, Taoist Clear Spring, and the other's strength was actually not low, but compared to Ziyue and Zhou Gutong, they were much weaker. At this time, when they heard the Taoist voice, they were intoxicated and felt that many difficult questions and puzzles had been solved at this time. Some problems that had been troubling them for decades were solved because of this, and their realms improved a little. Fan Qingyu, in particular, had extraordinary aptitude and special physique, and was born to conform to the Great Way. At this time, when she heard the Taoist voice, her Taoist body resonated, and her body emitted a strange light. There were Taoist principles around her, as if the rules of heaven and earth were directly poured into her mind. Originally, although she was at the peak of the divine realm, she was still a little away from condensing a gold core and needed some time. But now, not only did she have enough foundation and perfect her realm, but she also had absolute confidence that she could condense a first-grade gold core. If she had the support of treasures, she could try condensing a gold core. In this way, the discussion went on for 3 days and 3 nights. Almost everyone benefited a lot and felt that their progress was amazing. My friend's understanding of the rules of heaven and earth and the elaboration of the Great Way is really an eye-opener. If I didn't see it with my own eyes and hear it with my own ears, I really can't believe that you have just broken through to the primordial spirit realm. After a long time, Zhou Gutong stood up and said with a look of admiration, "Sex Master Zhou's understanding of the Great Way is also very profound. This time, it is also my honor to be able to receive sect leader Zhou's guidance." Ziyue also replied humbly. Zhou Gutong laughed Zhou Gufeng. Zhou Gutong laughed loudly. Then, he said with some emotion, "The world is a cage. If you can't break free from this cage, you're just a bird in a cage, a fish in a net. You can't escape." "How?" asked Zhou. "Fellow Taoist, have you sensed a type of suppression originating from heaven and earth? Fellow Taoist, you're only at the early stage primordial spirit realm, so there's still plenty of room for improvement. Perhaps you won't be able to feel it too deeply, but if you strike with all your might, you should be able to feel the invisible binding." Zhou Gutong looked at by Ziyue and said, "Strike with all my might?" Ziyue was puzzled. After breaking through to the primordial spirit realm, he had indeed not really struck with all his might. With a thought, he activated the heaven patching technique, great Tao manifestation, and many other techniques, and then controlled the flying sword to rush out. He directly stabbed with the heart sword technique. Buzz! The sword was extremely fast, and it pierced through the void easily. Then, with a loud boom, the void membrane was instantly shattered, and a large hole was formed. On the other side of the hole was the scene of spatial turbulence. Indeed, I feel a kind of restraint. It's as if the entire world is suppressing my strength. Ziyue's expression changed. Originally, with his control of his own strength, this sword stab would definitely be able to pierce through the void and break the void membrane. However, it would definitely not cause the power to disperse and cause a large part of the void to collapse. The reason for this was that there was a sudden suppressive force in the void that was suppressing the power of his attack. Under the suppression of the world, it seemed that he could only unleash this much power and could not increase it by even a little. This is what only Supreme Realm cultivators can feel: the shackles of the world and the suppression of the great Tao. Regardless of strength, speed, or defensive power, under the suppression of the world, one can only unleash a certain level of power at most. Generally speaking, such suppression of the world can only be felt by peak primordial spirit realm experts. However, your combat power has also reached the level of the Supreme Realm. Naturally, you will feel the same, Zhou Gutong explained. Hearing this, Ziyue was stunned. He finally understood the true meaning of the Supreme Realm cultivator. The Supreme Realm did not refer to a certain realm. In fact, even Zhou Gutong, who was a Supreme Realm cultivator, was also at the peak of the primordial spirit realm. The Supreme Realm referred to a certain level of power. It was the strongest power that a cultivator could unleash with the approval of the world. Even if a cultivator's actual strength exceeded the level of the Supreme Realm, under the suppression of the power of the astral realm, he could only unleash such a powerful attack at most. Then how can I unleash power that surpasses the level of the Supreme Realm? Ziyue could not help but ask. The suppression of the world's shackles did not have much of an effect on ordinary cultivators. However, to true Supreme Realm experts it was too frustrating. What they wanted more was to be free and unfettered. They wanted to be able to unleash all of their power with one attack without being affected at all. This kind of suppression of the world was another kind of shackle to them. No one wanted to have a set of shackles that would affect their strength. It's very difficult, Zhou Gutong said with a serious expression. Generally, there are only two ways. The first is simple. You can break through the realm and reach the spirit-severing stage to become a mighty immortal. In this way, your realm will transcend and your primordial spirit will transform. Naturally, you will be able to break free from the shackles of the world and unleash an attack that surpasses the limits of the primordial spirit realm. As for the other type, it was a little more complicated. It requires a Supreme Realm expert to improve their skills to the extreme and create a technique that is completely compatible with them and can perfectly unleash the advantage of their strength. This technique surpasses the Supreme Tao technique. Once it is unleashed, it often has the power of the spirit-severing stage. The power can break the sky and pierce through the firmament. It can be said to be at the heaven-breaking level. People even call this technique a heaven-breaking level Tao technique. You can break through the realm and reach the spirit-severing stage to become a mighty immortal. Or you can integrate yourself and create a heaven-breaking level Tao technique that is completely compatible with you. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. Whether it was breaking through to the spirit-severing stage to become a mighty immortal or integrating yourself and creating a heaven-breaking level Tao technique that surpassed the level of Tao techniques, it was not a simple matter. Not only did it require a lot of time and energy, but it also required a lot of opportunity and comprehension. Then in the current immortal spell world, is there anyone who can create a heaven-breaking level Tao technique? Ziyue asked immediately. Previously, he already knew that there were no spirit-severing stage mighty immortals in the current astral realm. Naturally, he was very curious about this heaven-breaking level Tao technique. This heaven-breaking level Tao technique is actually considered a type of supreme Tao technique. However, only the creator himself would be able to perfectly unleash the effects and power of the technique. Therefore, it is simply impossible to reach the level of heaven-breaking level just by learning and cultivating it. At present, in the entire immortal spell world, there are indeed people who have created heaven-breaking level Tao techniques and can unleash attacks that surpass heaven and earth. They are the Palace Lord of the Nine Stars Tao Palace, Zhao Qianquan of the Great Tao Business Alliance, and Jiang Wanli of the Limitless Demon Sect. These three are recognized as Supreme Realm experts who can unleash heaven-breaking attacks that are comparable to spirit-severing stage mighty immortals. Compared to them, Sect Master Situ Wu of the Myriad Phenomenon Sect and I are a little inferior. In the end, we were unable to create our own heaven-breaking level Tao technique. Zhou Gutong shook his head and sighed. There are actually three powerhouses who have achieved this. Ziyue's face suddenly revealed a trace of shock. He also knew in his heart how difficult it was. Just like Situ Wu and Zhou Gutong, which one of them was not at the peak of the primordial soul stage for hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, they had even stepped into the supreme realm for hundreds of years. However, even so, they were unable to create a heaven-breaking level Tao technique. One could imagine how difficult it was. However, thinking about it, it was normal. If Situ Wu could really do this, the threat of the tribulation would not have been able to do anything to him. However, breaking through to the spirit-severing stage is difficult for me in a short period of time. However, it is not difficult to integrate myself and create a heaven-breaking level Tao technique that can surpass the restrictions of heaven and earth. Ziyue suddenly thought of the precious treasure he had, the Book of the Great Tao. As long as he had enough energy, he could naturally use the Book of the Great Tao to create a heaven-breaking level Tao technique that belonged to him. Not to mention, he also had the attribute panel and spiritual energy to assist him. In a stretch of huge mountains, a huge flying boat swept across like lightning and disappeared in a flash. This huge flying boat was golden in color. Its appearance was like a rowboat, but the inside was very different. Not only did it have a normal cabin deck, but it also had a secret cultivation room that was independent. This flying boat was the large boat that Ziyue had spent 70,000 supreme-grade spirit stones to exchange for from the celestial spirit sect. At this moment, there were many cultivators sitting cross-legged on the large boat. Ziyue, Fan Qingyu, Jiang Taixian, and the formation master, Master Calm Heart, an elder of the celestial spirit sect. His formation master was even better than Master Calm Heart, true venerable Mo Fan. Since the day after the sparring session, the many treasures that Ziyue had exchanged from the celestial spirit sect had been in his hands one by one. He also fulfilled his promise and handed the demonic saber to the sect leader of the celestial spirit sect, Zhou Gutong. True venerable Mo Fan, how far is it from here to the 5 Peaks Mountain? Suddenly, on the flying boat, Ziyue slowly opened his eyes. It was as if he had triggered lightning in the void, and there was a feeling of the great Tao descending from the sky. Sect leader Biming, with the speed of the large boat, we will reach the 5 Peaks Mountain in half a day at most. True venerable Mo Fan looked into Ziyue's eyes and his pupils shrank. He could feel the terror in them, and he hurriedly spoke carefully. He was even more in awe of Ziyue. It was not only because he had successfully passed the tribulation and stepped into the primordial soul realm, but also because of the peerless demeanor and supreme spirit that he had displayed in the Dragon Palace. The battle back then had left a deep impression on him. This large boat is indeed one of the best flying boats in the world. With such extreme speed, we have traveled such a long distance in just half a day. We have officially stepped into the northern area of the purple-green mountains. Master Calm Heart was also horrified. This large boat is a treasure that can save the life of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator. Of course, it is extremely fast. True venerable Mo Fan said with a cold smile. Apart from Ziyue and Fan Qingyu, he would not be courteous to anyone else. Especially when he knew that Master Calm Heart was a formation master like him, and her formation skills were not as good as his. As for Jiang Taixian, he sat obediently to the side, not daring to express any opinions. Half a day? It is indeed very fast. Ziyue nodded. He was quite satisfied with the speed of the large boat. If it was his own speed, it would naturally be faster than the large boat. However, even if it was him, if he carried so many people with him at full speed, it would be very difficult for him, and his speed would be greatly reduced. With the large boat, not only was it extremely fast, but it could also carry a lot of people. Naturally, it was much more convenient. The purple-green mountains was a huge, undulating mountain range that seemed to have no end. Not only was the Celestial Spirit sect located in it, but even the Nature sect was not too far away from the Celestial Spirit sect, not to mention the countless small sects that were entrenched in it. The 5 Peaks Mountain that Ziyue had chosen was in the northern region of the purple-green mountains. It was 3,000 miles away from the nearest immortal sections. Not only was it slightly desolate, but it was also surrounded by a group of strong cultivators. Not to mention the threat of the 5 Peaks Mountain itself, the 6-tailed spiritual monkey was also surrounded by monsters that were comparable to the primordial soul realm. Therefore, this exploration was actually a very dangerous thing to do. Fortunately, Ziyue was skilled and bold, and his strength was shocking. He could suppress everything, so there was no need to worry about this. However, if there is still half a day, I wonder if it is enough? Ziyue had a thoughtful look on his face. From Zhou Gudong's words, he had truly learned far too many secrets. He had also learned many secrets that could only be understood after reaching a certain level. For example, the arrival of the immortals and the calamity of the astral boundary. For example, the situation of the strong cultivators of the astral boundary and the spirit-severing realm. For example, the shackles of heaven and earth, the suppression of the great Tao. Chapter 806. In particular, the shackles of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao had a great impact on his strength. Now, he had only just raised his attack power to the level of the supreme realm. When he struck with all his strength, he could already feel the obvious suppression of the great Tao. What if he still could not break through the suppression of the great Tao when his cultivation level increased and his strength increased? This is actually something that is very likely to happen. According to sect leader Zhou, the shackles of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao are a kind of suppression of one's cultivation level. It is a kind of confusion in one's understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. If one's cultivation level has not reached the spirit-severing stage, their techniques have not broken through the limits of the shackles, they will not be able to break through the layers of the laws of heaven and earth and the shackles of the great Tao. After all, my cultivation level has only increased from the early stage to the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. It will take a long time before I reach the spirit-severing stage. In other words, it will consume a huge amount of soul energy. In terms of cultivation level, I have not truly reached the spirit-severing stage. I have only reached the level of strength. Ziyue had his own judgment. Cultivation level and strength coexisted. Between the two, there would be a huge gap between them and ordinary cultivators because of their techniques or the depth of their foundation. For example, Ziyue's cultivation level was only at the early stage of the primordial spirit realm, but his strength had reached the supreme realm. He was different from ordinary cultivators. However, cultivation level was still cultivation level. The early stage of the primordial spirit realm was still the early stage of the primordial spirit realm. In terms of cultivation level, he was actually inferior to Zhou Gutong and Situ Wu. He was even inferior to Mo Fan, who was at the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. However, perhaps because the cultivation method he cultivated was created by himself, his understanding of the laws of heaven and earth, as well as his understanding of the laws of heaven and earth, as well as his understanding of cultivation level, was higher than his opponent. However, this only meant that his cultivation did not have a bottleneck. The actual use of power, or rather, the power structure of the primordial spirit, was ultimately inferior to a real high-level cultivator. However, I still have to give it a try. Let me see if I can break through the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the great Tao if my cultivation level and strength increase. Ziyue was extremely ambitious. He was confident that if his cultivation level increased and the power of the primordial spirit evolved, his cultivation level and strength would also increase. He would be able to break through the suppression of heaven and earth. Thinking of this, he glanced at his attribute panel. There's still over 13 billion points of soul energy left. It should be enough for me to improve my immortal technique. Ziyue's gaze quickly landed on his stats window. It was the primordial spirit cultivation method, the Grand Yuan spirit scripture. By consuming 2 billion points of soul energy, the Grand Primordial Spirit Canon can be upgraded from beginner to small success. The Primordial Spirit Canon, from the initial stage to the initial stage, is actually to raise the realm of my immortal techniques from the initial stage of the Primordial Spirit Realm to the intermediate stage of the Primordial Spirit Realm. Moreover, it is only the initial stage of entering the intermediate stage of the Primordial Spirit Realm, but the amount of spiritual energy required is already as much as 2 billion? What about great success and perfection? What kind of terrifying amount of soul energy would it consume? Ziyue's face revealed a rare trace of sluggishness. He suddenly realized that he was only at the primordial soul stage. If he continued to increase his cultivation level in the future and reach the spirit-severing stage, or even beyond that, How terrifying would the energy he would need to break through be? By then, would there really be so many experts and enemies waiting for him to kill? Forget it, this is ultimately a blessing in disguise. This stats window is already enough to allow me to have countless more opportunities and possibilities compared to ordinary cultivators, and save me a lot of cultivation time. I can't ask for too much. Moreover, it's not like I can't cultivate. Even if my true cultivation talent is not as good as those super geniuses, resources, comprehension, opportunities, and even blessings are the most important in the later stages of an immortal techniques cultivator. Ordinary cultivation talent is not that important. Xiu's mentality was extremely good. Even though he knew that in the future, he might need to spend more time to improve his cultivation through the stats window, he was not disheartened. He had always believed that by relying on his own hard work in cultivation, he could also achieve Tao transcendence and climb to the top. The stats window was only a supplementary method. If he really used this supplementary method as the foundation of his cultivation and neglected his own hard work, he would lose his original intention and cause the great Tao to be covered in dust. Consume. After a moment of enlightenment, Xiu's mind became even more resolute and he chose to consume without hesitation. In an instant, Xiu felt his mind move. The golden essence soul power in his body quickly circulated through the essence soul realm cultivation technique, the great essence soul scripture. The great primordial spirit scripture was created by Xiu. The primordial spirit and the physical body complemented each other. It was a cultivation method that could improve both the primordial spirit and the primordial spirit. As the endless spiritual energy was consumed, his physical body and primordial spirit began to improve rapidly. Not only did the golden light of the essence soul continue to strengthen, but even the strength of his physical body and the deeper layers of his physical body particles were also continuously strengthening. This was especially so for the physical body particles. With the support of the essence soul power, they seemed to be glowing with potential. They emitted a lustrous radiance and became tougher and more powerful. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, when his physical body and essence soul had both improved to a certain limit. Boom! It was as if he had broken through the shackles and opened a new life. A special aura that was far more powerful than before involuntarily emitted. I'm at the mid-stage essence soul realm. Xiu's mind shook, and he also felt a little happy. The feeling of having a breakthrough and a surge in power was indeed very intoxicating. On the side, Emofan, True Venerate Emofan and the others also seemed to have felt the difference in Xiu. They all looked at him in shock. Even though Xiu had already used the shadow gravity domain to protect himself before the breakthrough, the aura of the breakthrough was too strong. It directly broke through the protection of the shadow gravity domain, and a trace of his aura eventually leaked out. Mid-stage essence soul realm? Sect Master Biming, have you already broken through to the mid-stage essence soul realm? Emofan's eyes were dull as he asked with a shocked face. The others were also surprised and confused. They were limited by their strength, and their perception was not as sharp as Emofan's, who had already reached the peak of the mid-stage essence soul realm. However, they did feel that Xiu's aura had increased tremendously compared to before. But to break through to the mid-stage essence soul realm? That's impossible, right? That's too fast. How long had it been since he had just successfully passed the tribulation and became a true cultivator of the essence soul realm? How could there be a breakthrough so quickly? In fact, even Emofan's True Venerate Emofan was a little suspicious. He thought that everything that had happened before was just an illusion. It's just a little bit. Xiu explained indifferently, and did not say anything else. Although he was now not afraid of others knowing about the change in his strength, he was not afraid of being discovered by others. After all, he was already at the pinnacle state, and was not afraid of anyone. Even if he could not defeat them, he could still step into the turbulence of space to escape. However, he was naturally cautious, and naturally kept a little bit of caution. He did not take the initiative to admit that he had already reached the mid-stage essence soul realm. As he maintained the shadow gravity domain, it was extremely difficult for anyone to see through his true realm unless their strength was at least 2 levels higher than his. As he said that, a flying sword rushed out of his body with a thought. Chi, the flying sword, used the heart sword technique, and turned into a stream of light that pierced into the void. Rumble! The space barrier shattered, and a large part of the void collapsed instantly, forming a huge turbulence of space. Under the destruction of the terrifying power, the turbulence of space was maintained, and it took a long time for the power of the star world to restore it. What a powerful attack! The strength of this attack seems to be a lot stronger than when he was in the Heavenly Spirit Palace. Jiang Taixian exclaimed, dazzled and fascinated. This attack is indeed too powerful. It feels more terrifying than the full-powered attack of the sect leader of the Nature Sect, the pinnacle state expert Situ Wu. Fan Qingyu nodded as she looked at Ziyue with her bright eyes. She was very intoxicated. Indeed. I really did not expect sect leader Bei Ming's strength to increase so much in such a short time. As far as I know, after a cultivator's strength breaks through, there is usually a period of rapid growth. During this period of time, the cultivator's strength will continue to increase, and it will only stabilize after a period of time. Could this be sect leader Bei Ming's true strength, and he just did not increase it to the extreme before? Master Jingxin was also amazed. The power that erupted from Ziyue's attack was too terrifying. Even if their cultivation was slightly lower and they did not have enough control over their strength, they could still clearly feel the difference in strength. This speed of growth is too terrifying. It's so terrifying that it's shocking. True Venerate Mo Fan murmured in a low voice. While he was shocked, he also felt a chill in his heart. Before this, he was still full of confidence and wanted to find trouble with Ziyue to stand up for the Celestial Spirit sect. Now that he thought about it, he was really glad. Fortunately, back in the Dragon Palace, he saw the opportunity early and escaped in time. Otherwise, he would have died on the spot. Fortunately, when he met Ziyue this time, he was with sect leader Zhou Gutong. Otherwise, if Ziyue wanted to make a fuss about it, how could he still be alive? Fortunately, he had the identity of a formation grandmaster and had already turned hostility into friendship with Zhou Gutong. Otherwise, how could he have the chance to see Zhou Gutong's extraordinary means? As expected, however, unlike Fan Qingyu, Jiang Taixian, True Venerate Mo Fan and the others who were exclaiming excitedly, Ziyue sighed. After breaking through to the intermediate primordial spirit realm, my strength is much stronger than before. The power of my full-powered attack is also much stronger than before. However, the moment this power rushed out, it was actually sensed by the heavens and the earth, and was thus suppressed. Although the power released by this attack is terrifying, and the range of the spatial barrier has increased by countless times, in terms of attack power, it's still at the level of a limiter, and it hasn't increased in the slightest. Was the attack of the Supreme Realm weak? Not at all. However, when Ziyue was in the early primordial spirit realm, he was already able to unleash the power of the Supreme Realm. Now that he had improved to the intermediate primordial spirit realm, the strength of his attack was still at the level of the Supreme Realm. Naturally, he was a little depressed. It seems like my previous speculation is correct. I have to integrate everything, in terms of realm or strength, and transcend the limits before I can truly unleash my full strength. Ziyue was well aware of this. In terms of realm, he had just broken through to the intermediate primordial spirit realm. After that, there was still the advanced primordial spirit realm, the peak primordial spirit realm, and then the spirit-severing stage. Not only was it difficult to improve, but it also required a lot of soul energy. It required tens of billions of soul energy. At the very least, he would not be able to gather that much soul energy in a short period of time. Therefore, the only thing he could think of was to meet the requirements in terms of strength and technique. Create a heaven-breaking Tao technique. It was a technique that belonged to him alone and could completely integrate his strength, unleash all his advantages, and break through the shackles of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao. This was definitely going to be extremely difficult. This was because the creation of any Tao technique required a cultivator to accumulate experience over a long period of time and countless years of study, as well as an understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. This was especially true for heaven-breaking Tao technique. Most importantly, it had to originate from oneself and be created according to one's own characteristic. Under normal circumstances, it would naturally be extremely difficult for him to create a heaven-breaking Tao technique that belonged to him alone in a short period of time. After all, even Situ Wu, Zhou Gutong, and other veteran Supreme Realm cultivators who had been in the Supreme Realm for hundreds and thousands of years had not been able to create a heaven-breaking Tao technique, let alone him. However, it should not be forgotten that not only did he have the stats panel that could activate the Enlightenment period, but he also had the Book of Great Tao that could deduce everything. This would definitely greatly increase his efficiency in creating heaven-breaking Tao technique. When he thought of this, he activated the Enlightenment period and could not help but take out the Book of Great Tao again. Activating the Book of Great Tao consumed a large amount of energy every minute and every second. Previously, Ziyue had created the Grand Yuan Spirit True Classic because of the auspicious signs of heaven and earth descending and continuously replenishing his energy. Otherwise, even with Ziyue's wealth, he would not be able to bear it and would be completely depleted. This time, he needed to create a heaven-breaking Tao technique that belonged to him alone, and he needed to borrow the power of the Book of Great Tao. Naturally, he was prepared to consume a large amount of spirit stones. Buzz. A large pile of spirit stones was quickly moved out of the northern underworld grotto heaven. Then, with a thought, he directly crushed them. Pure and rich energy essence instantly spread out and was immediately devoured by the Book of Great Tao, turning into nourishment. At the same time, on the Book of Great Tao, 3,000 great Taos circulated and endless Tao laws manifested. They were all clearly visible to Ziyue. Even Jiang Taishu, Fan Qingyu, Master Jingxin, True Supremacy Mo Fan, and the others clearly felt the Tao laws between heaven and earth at this moment. At this moment, they were incomparably thick and almost clearly visible. Opportunity! Opportunity! This moment, to them, could be considered a supreme opportunity. It was a great opportunity. As if they were blessed, none of them dared to hesitate. They all gathered their thoughts and instantly entered into cultivation. They hungrily absorbed, digested, and sensed the power and changes of the Tao laws between heaven and earth. Chapter 807. After summoning the Book of De Tao, Ziyue did not stop. He hesitated for a moment and waved his hand. Boom! The void shook and a golden pagoda appeared. Kunwu Golden Pagoda! It was the superior spiritual treasure, Kunwu Golden Pagoda. When Ziyue summoned the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, he glanced at Fan Qingyu, Jiang Taishan, Master Jingxin, Mo Fan, and the others. Fan Qingyu, in particular, had a peaceful look on her face. She was immersed in sensing the manifestation of the heavens and earth, and began to cultivate continuously. From time to time, she would flip her hand and a jade bottle would appear. Inside the jade bottle, there was a special liquid that she would absorb and fill her body. The liquid in the jade bottle was the Moonlight True Liquid that Ziyue had exchanged from the sect master of the Celestial Spirit sect, Zhou Gutong. The Moonlight True Liquid not only had the effect of purifying one's body and stabilizing one's realm, but it also nourished one's body and soul. It was the best treasure that a God realm cultivator could use before breaking through. The reason why Ziyue had exchanged for the moonlight true liquid that was not very useful to him was because of Fan Qingyu. He wanted to lay a supreme foundation for her and create another Ziji golden core for her. Although it was difficult, he was willing to give it a try. Seeing this, he finally moved everyone, including Fan Qingyu, into the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. To be exact, they were in the Law Cultivation Room inside the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. The Law Cultivation Room was extremely useful for a cultivator's cultivation. It could also play an unimaginable role in his creation and deduction of heaven-breaking Dao spells. Another pile of spirit stones was piled up and the Law Cultivation Room was officially activated. Instantly, the power of the heavens and earth that had been clearly imprinted by the Book of De Dao became more obvious and rich. The mysteries of the heavens and earth that were originally difficult to understand and the mysteries of the heavens and earth were clearly revealed in front of everyone at this moment. Ziyue also immersed himself in the next moment and began to think carefully about the possibility of creating heaven-breaking Dao spells. In fact, supreme Dao spells are all heaven-breaking Dao spells. For example, Heartsword, True Dragon Profound Armor Technique, 9 Thunderbolts God-Destroying Seal, and even 5,000 miles in a breath. All of these Dao techniques could be counted as heaven-breaking Dao technique. However, these Dao techniques could only be unleashed in the hands of their creators. Only then would they be able to unleash the power of creation and transcendence. As for me, even if I can improve these techniques to perfection, with the number of acupoints I have ignited, the foundation of my great Tao, and so on, I can control these techniques and unleash their full power. However, these techniques are not created by me, so it is difficult for me to fully unleash my advantages. These techniques might be other people's Heaven Breaker Tao techniques, but they aren't mine. Inside the Law Cultivation Room, Ziyue suddenly had an epiphany. This was because these techniques were indeed extremely powerful, far surpassing ordinary Dao technique. In his opinion, each of the supreme Dao spells he cultivated was extremely powerful, far surpassing ordinary Dao technique. Perhaps they were the heaven-breaking Dao spells that Spirit Severing True Venerate and other Spirit Severing True Venerate had used to break free from the shackles of heaven and earth and suppress the great Dao when they were in the extreme realm. However, these techniques might be able to unleash the power of Spirit Severing True Venerate and the others perfectly, but they still couldn't unleash his full power. His foundation was much stronger than Spirit Severing True Venerate and other Spirit Severing True Venerate. Therefore, the difficulty of creating his heaven-breaking Dao spells would naturally be greater, and the power contained in them would definitely be greater. Then, how should I create my heaven-breaking Dao spells? Ziyue was confused for a moment. Ordinary Dao spells always had their own characteristic. For example, Heartsword used the mind to control the sword. Where the mind was, the sword would be where the mind was. True Dragon Profound Armor Technique used the armor to transform into the shape of a dragon and enhance the user's defense. Traveling 1,000 miles in an instant relied on speed. It focused on the fusion of the spirit and the body, merging with heaven and earth, and traversing 1,000 miles in an instant. 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal used the Thunder Seal to destroy the primordial spirit. Where the Thunder Seal reached, the primordial spirit would be destroyed. There was also the Metamagnetic Divine Light and 9 Extinction Divine Sword. They all had their own characteristics and were extremely powerful in comparison. If he wanted to create his own Dao spells, he had to grasp this point and combine it with his own characteristics. What are my characteristics? Is it the physical body and the primordial spirit that complement each other, or is it the golden primordial spirit that is born naturally? Ziyue muttered to himself, and then he quickly thought of the ultimate attack that Situ Wu, the sect master of the Myriad Phenomenon sect, had used. That attack not only contained the power of Dao spells, but also a primordial spirit attack. The combination of the two not only complemented each other, but also posed a great threat to cultivators. This was because ordinary defensive techniques, even if they could defend against Tao spells, were often helpless against primordial spirit attacks. Even if they could defend against primordial spirit attacks, they would pale in comparison to Tao spells. There might be defensive techniques that could completely defend against soul and material attacks, but they were definitely extremely rare and powerful. For example, Ziyue's True Dragon Profound Armor technique was at most effective against material attacks, but it was almost useless against primordial spirit defense. This was a supreme Tao spell that was secretly passed down in the Dragon Clan. One could imagine that other defensive techniques would be even rarer. Therefore, Ziyue quickly thought of whether he should use this line of thought to create his own heaven-breaking Tao spells. Actually, he had experimented before and discovered that he could only use the true Marshal's Great Palm imprint when he used an early form of the soul attacking technique. That was the only way he could use it. Now that he was actually creating the technique, after careful analysis, he immediately discovered the reason behind it. A cultivator's primordial spirit is a very mysterious existence. It naturally contains a unique fluctuation that belongs to a person. If I want to add the profoundness of a primordial spirit attack to a normal material attack, I have to combine this special fluctuation with the material attack method. Only then can the two rely on each other and coexist and be effective. Ziyue combined the true martial Grand Palm seal and quickly came up with an idea. One by one, the laws of heaven and earth and the profoundness of Tao spells flashed through his mind. All sorts of wonderful ideas and endless applications seemed to come at his fingertips, and he skillfully grasped them. Almost in the blink of an eye, a Tao spell was created by him. Ziyue did not try to come up with a heaven-breaking Tao technique right away. If it was really that easy, so many extreme realm experts would not have been trapped for hundreds and thousands of years. Therefore, he started with the simplest Tao spell. With his foundation, the time spent comprehending the Tao, the Book of the Great Tao, and the support of the nomological cultivation room, it was extremely easy to create a Tao spell. After creating the Tao spell, he quickly combined the primordial spirit fluctuations with it, again and again, little by little. This was actually a process of continuous accumulation and trial. It required a lot of patience and a lot of hard work. Fortunately, with his methods, once the fusion failed, he would be able to discover the key to the problem in an instant. He would change his mind in time and try again. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Soon, the pile of spirit stones was exhausted, and Ziyue took out another pile. Tao spells, mystical abilities, great mystical abilities. Ziyue also created various offensive methods along the way. With a deep foundation and the support of various auxiliary methods, his advancement was extremely fast. It was only when his offensive methods were upgraded to great mystical abilities that it became a little more difficult. When the primordial spirit fluctuations were compatible with a Tao spell, they would often separate due to a slight change in the primordial energy. However, Ziyue was not in a hurry. He had long known that this required a long process of trial and error. As long as the framework was set up in the early stages, the later stages would be much simpler. In a short period of time, from Tao spells to great mystical abilities, it was equivalent to saving countless cultivators nearly 100 years of hard work. Wait, something seems wrong. Suddenly Ziyue frowned. He suddenly felt that the Tao spell that he had created was not compatible with him. This was not because it was not compatible with the power of his primordial spirit, nor was it because of the primordial spirit fluctuations. It was because of his physical body. His powerful physique gave him unparalleled power. Naturally, it also gave birth to a power that was unique to his physical body. Every move of his contained great power. At this moment, this slight disharmony was caused by the powerful energy fluctuations in his body. Yes, my physical body and primordial spirit complement each other. If the Tao spell that I create does not use my physical body, it will be difficult for me to unleash my full strength. Therefore, my heaven-breaking Tao spell will definitely be different from Situwu's. Not only does it contain the material attack of the Tao spell, but it also has to contain the physical attack of the primordial spirit. A trace of understanding flashed through Ziyue's mind. He quickly followed the advice and began to try again. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Tao spell level, mystique level, great mystique level. Ziyue continued to try and make mistake. Perhaps it was because of the combination of 3 powers, but the efficiency was many times slower and more difficult than he had imagined. It's not that easy to create a heaven-breaking Tao spell. After a long time, Ziyue opened his eyes and could not help but sigh. In the past few hours, Ziyue had spent a large number of spirit stones, with the help of the Book of the Great Tao, the Precept Cultivation Room, and continued to use the Time of Enlightenment. However, in the end, he had not truly created a heaven-breaking Tao spell. The only thing that satisfied him was that he had finally completely deduced this Tao spell to the level of a Tao spell. Although it had not truly taken shape, at least the framework had been built and the embryonic form had been formed. Not only does this embryonic form of the heaven-breaking Tao spell contain a material attack, a primordial spirit attack, and a physical attack of the qi of the primordial spirit. Moreover, the combination of the 3 seems to have triggered a special transformation, which then transformed into a special force. Ziyue pondered and finally became excited. Even though he knew that this embryonic form of the heaven-breaking Tao spell still needed a long time to deduce and create it, at least in terms of percentage progress, he was only at the 10% level now. Moreover, the deduction later would be even more difficult. However, it had truly allowed him to see the hope of success. He was no longer at a loss like before and did not know how to proceed to the next step of the deduction. It's a pity that there's not enough time. Moreover, maintaining the Book of the Great Tao and the Precept Cultivation Room for such a long time consumes too much energy. Even I can't bear it. Ziyue shook his head helplessly and sighed. Several hours of deduction and creation, especially the maintenance of the Great Tao Scripture and the Law's Cultivation Room, required a vast amount of energy to support them. The consumption was too great, like a bottomless pit. Even though he had accumulated a lot of spirit stones along the way, he still found it a little hard to bear. This was why he gradually stopped after consuming nearly half of his spirit stones. This was because he knew that with his current spirit stone reserves, even if he exhausted them all, it was simply not enough to completely deduce this heaven-breaking Tao spell. Perhaps I can only wait until the Great Mountain Protection Formation is completed and borrow the spirit chi power of the entire grade 5 high-tier spirit vein to supply the Book of the Great Tao and the Precept Cultivation Room? Ziyue calculated and was also clear about the difference between the support of an individual and the maintenance of a spirit vein. The spirit stones of heaven and earth in a spirit vein were integrated with the entire world. As long as the spirit vein did not decline, the spirit chi would be endless. The abundance of spirit stones would far exceed that of him alone. Naturally, it could maintain the continuous consumption of the Book of the Great Tao and the Precept Cultivation Room. And he also estimated that at that time, with the help of the endless supply of energy, he would definitely be able to create the heaven-breaking Tao spell without interruption. As such, he was not in a hurry. Even if he urgently wanted to break free from the shackles of heaven and earth and the suppression of the Great Tao to unleash his perfect attack. But with his strength, he was not worried that anyone would be able to threaten him in the short term. Even if someone were to come knocking on his door, they would not be able to escape from his strong suppression. As Ziyue stopped creating, Fan Qingyu and the others, who had been immersed in their cultivation, gradually woke up. Then, their faces lit up with excitement. It was obvious that they had gained a lot and had made significant progress. For example, true Venerate Mo Fan had already reached the peak of the mid-stage of the primordial soul realm and could advance to the late stage of the primordial soul realm at any time. But this step was like a heavenly strike that had trapped him for more than 100 years. And at this moment, because the Book of the Great Tao had evolved the laws of heaven and earth, under the special effect of the precept cultivation room, there was finally a slight loosening. Even if he had not completely broken through and stepped into the late stage of the primordial soul realm, there was already hope. It would not be long before he advanced and became a late-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. As for Master Calm Heart and Jiang Taixian, both of them had also gained a lot. Among them, Master Calm Heart had already reached the peak of the Golden Core realm. Although he had not been able to make a breakthrough this time, it had strengthened his Tao heart and allowed him to understand the foundation of the Great Tao. It would be extremely beneficial for his primordial soul tribulation in the future. In his opinion, this opportunity would at least increase his chances of successfully passing the tribulation by 50%. If he accumulated it for a period of time, his chances of passing the tribulation would be even greater. How important was this to him, who had no hope of reaching the primordial soul realm? It also made him extremely grateful to Ziyue. Chapter 808. Jiang Taixian was the only one among the four who had achieved a breakthrough in the realm of immortal technique. The joy in his heart was indescribable. Originally, he had been in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Although the Tribulation Transcendence had given him great benefits and deepened his foundation, it had not improved his realm of immortal technique. But this time, because of Ziyue's enlightenment and the support of the Law Cultivation Room, his realm had immediately loosened and he had broken through from the late stage of the Golden Core realm to the perfected Golden Core realm. The foundation brought about by the Tribulation Transcendence and the increase in strength after the breakthrough had boosted his confidence. He believed that he was not weaker than any other cultivator of the same realm. He could be crowned as a Golden Core King and be comparable to the true disciples of the major sections. The three of them had all gained something and their cultivation had improved. But in terms of gains, it was Fan Qingyu who had gained the most. Although she had not broken through her realm, because of her special physique, she was naturally compatible with the Great Path. Therefore, her understanding of the heavenly Tao was much deeper than that of ordinary cultivators. This time, Ziyue's creation, whether it was the Book of the Great Path or the Law Cultivation Room, had revealed the heavenly Tao's heavenly Tao clearly. Bathed in it, her physique resonated with it and a special power of heavenly Tao flowed into her body, giving her a sense of perfection. That was a sign that her Taoist body had been repaired and her physique had evolved. Her Taoist body had reached the perfected stage. Under the perfected stage, although her cultivation had not improved, the benefits that came with it were absolutely amazing. Cultivators who had a natural Taoist body were favored by heaven. They were naturally close to the heavenly Tao and their cultivation speed was incomparably fast. The perfected stage not only greatly improved her physique, but also made her foundation and accumulation extremely deep. In the future, her cultivation speed would be even more amazing. At this moment, although Fan Qingyu was only at the peak of the godly realm, her aura and strength were no weaker than that of a middle-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. Another thing worth mentioning was that perhaps because of the perfected stage, the heavenly Tao's aura that had been constantly revealed on her body had completely disappeared. It did not disappear, but was completely under her control and could be controlled and revealed at will. Thank you, North Nether Sect Leader. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. The group of people immediately noticed the changes in their bodies and looked at Ziyue excitedly. You're too polite. It's just a coincidence. Bai Ziyue shook his head. He was clearly aware that a similar fortuitous encounter might be extremely ordinary to him. After all, His reserves and strength far surpassed countless cultivators, but it might not be the same for other cultivators. The reason they were able to evolve and improve so much was naturally because of such opportunities. For other cultivators, it was incomparably profound and important. "Thank you." At this moment, Fan Qingyu came closer and said in a low voice, "Why did the aura of the Tao law on your body disappear? Has your Tao body reached perfection?" "True Highness Mo Fan exclaimed when he finally noticed the difference in Fan Qingyu. "That's right. My Tao body has been completely replenished and perfected. Now I can start breaking through and condensing my golden core at any time." Fan Qingyu smiled. She was overjoyed. Furthermore, there was something she did not say. If she condensed her golden core now, it would almost certainly be a first-grade golden core. Furthermore, she was at least 80% confident that she would be able to attain the Ziji Golden Core. The Ziji Golden Core was known as the King of the Golden Cores. It not only represented foundation and strength, but also unlimited potential. This time, Bai Ziyue had created a technique, and almost everyone had benefited greatly. Bai Ziyue was also very satisfied. After all, his path of creation had been quite smooth. He already had a direction. Now, he only lacked energy. When he occupied the Five Peaks Mountain and set up the Mountain Protection Formation, he could naturally use the endless spiritual qi in the spiritual vein to deduce. He was not in a hurry. "Look, we've arrived at the Five Peaks Mountain." Suddenly, Jiang Taixian let out a cry of surprise. Then, everyone looked over and saw 5 huge mountains standing on the horizon. These 5 mountains were like 5 huge fingers. They stood there with their hands hanging down, as if they were grasping but not grasping at the same time. In the surroundings, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth spread out, forming a dense fog. Occasionally, it would gather into clouds, and the clouds would turn into birds. Then, with a soft sound, spiritual rain would fall. The spiritual qi turned into fog, spiritual qi turned into birds, and spiritual qi turned into rain. This was a phenomenon that would only happen when the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was extremely dense. No wonder it's a high-grade 5 spiritual vein. Its aura is extraordinary. Master Calm Heart exclaimed in admiration, revealing a hint of intoxication. Thinking about how he was going to set up a formation in this huge mountain range, he felt even more excited. A superior grade 5 spiritual vein is already so extraordinary. I wonder how the legendary grade 6 spiritual vein will be like? Jiang Taixian, who was standing aside, also said in shock. A grade 6 spiritual vein is actually not much different from a superior grade 5 spiritual vein. It's just that at the core, there's an additional trace of fortune, and immortal spiritual qi will be born. This immortal spiritual qi contains great fortune. Just a trace of it has great fortune, and it's thousands of times better than spiritual qi. It's a treasure that only spirit-severing stage cultivators can absorb and refine. Although primordial spirit realm cultivators can absorb it, it's much more difficult. Of course, the benefits after absorbing it are also very great. After many years, it can increase the chances of breaking through to the spirit-severing stage. Unfortunately, my aptitude is not high, and my strength and status in the sect are relatively low. In addition, there are many rare flowers and herbs in the sect, and the great Tao treasure tree needs immortal spiritual qi to grow. Therefore, I can only absorb 30 strands of immortal spiritual qi every year. True supremacy. Mo Fan explained with a smile. Obviously, although he said it was a pity, he was actually quite satisfied. After all, only a grade 6 spiritual vein could produce immortal spiritual qi. How rare were grade 6 spiritual veins in the entire star realm. Even the Celestial Spirit sect had to pay a huge price and endless resources to nurture and cultivate them. The original grade of the Celestial Spirit sect's spiritual vein was actually only a grade 5 spiritual vein. Ziyue nodded silently. He didn't care much about the grade of the spiritual vein. A grade 5 spiritual vein was enough to supply the consumption of a large sect. Although a grade 6 spiritual vein was more precious, it was not necessary. Moreover, the Biming sect that he created was still in the initial stage of development. It could be called a small sect. This grade 5 spiritual vein was enough to supply its development for hundreds of thousands of years. If there was a need in the future, it would not be too late to consume resources to upgrade its grade. It was almost impossible for the outside world to have one, except for the 10 major celestial forces. Roar. At this moment, a loud roar suddenly came from Mount Wuji in the distance. Following that, roars could be heard one after another. From afar, everyone could see that in Mount Wuji, there were many gigantic spirit monkeys climbing and howling excitedly. These spiritual monkeys were covered with silver hair. They were strong, and their fingernails were long like sharp blades that could easily cut through mountains and split rock. However, the most peculiar thing about them was that they had more or less tails behind them. Among them, there were more than 4 or 5. Even if there were fewer, there were more than 2. Perhaps only some of the spirit monkeys that were in their infancy stage had a tail growing on their bodies. Those are spiritual monkeys, multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. The number of tails determines their status and strength in the tribe. Other than the spiritual monkeys in their infancy, who only have 1 tail, most of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys have more than 2 tails. 2 tails are equivalent to the aperture awakening realm for us cultivators. 3 tails are equivalent to the God realm. 4 tails are equivalent to the golden core realm. 5 tails are equivalent to the primordial soul realm. True Supremacy Mo Fan looked at the spiritual monkeys in the distance and introduced them. I heard that there is a 6-tailed spiritual monkey among the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. Is this 6-tailed spiritual monkey equivalent to a spirit-severing realm expert? Fan Qingyu couldn't help but ask in surprise. As a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect, she had heard of the Mount Wuji and knew that there was a 6-tailed spiritual monkey. Now that she heard that the 5-tailed spiritual monkeys had the strength of the primordial soul realm, she couldn't help but feel nervous. After all, although Ziyue was strong, he was at most in the ultimate primordial soul realm. He was no match for a spirit-severing realm beast. That's not the case. Although the 6-tailed spiritual monkey is much stronger than the 5-tailed spiritual monkeys, it is still in the primordial soul realm. However, it is the king of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. With the help of its bloodline, it naturally has an extra tail compared to other spiritual monkeys of the same level. The 6-tailed spiritual monkey king on this Mount Wuji is indeed very strong. Not only has it reached the advanced primordial soul realm, its strength is also very strong. With the help of the other monkeys, even a peak primordial soul realm expert wouldn't dare to provoke it. It would cost a lot to obtain it. This is also the reason why this spirit vein has been abandoned and no one dares to take it. True Supremacy Mo Fan quickly explained. He then looked at Ziyue and said, "Sect leader Biming, we can wait here for a while. In a few days, the experts from our Celestial Spirit sect will come and clean up these multi-tailed spiritual monkeys. In addition, many formation masters and even weapon refiners from our sect will come along. We will definitely be able to set up the mountain protection formation according to your request in the shortest time possible." "It's fine. If it's just a group of monkeys, it won't be a problem for me." Ziyue smiled. He then soared into the sky and quickly rushed toward the 5 Peaks mountain in the distance. There were countless spirit veins in the Indigo Mountains. However, there were very few spirit veins that were above grade 5. Furthermore, spirit veins and blessed lands of this grade were usually occupied by powerful sects or powerful beasts. There were very few grade 5 spirit veins that didn't have an owner. The 5 Peaks Mountain in the Indigo Mountains was considered a top-notch blessed land for any immortal magic faction or beast. Every once in a while, there would be a great battle to determine who would own it. However, in the past 1,000 years, the appearance of the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys, especially the six-tailed spiritual monkey king, made the ownership of the spirit veins uncontroversial. It had been hundreds of years since any expert dared to challenge and fight for it. Fortunately, I am wise. I travel like the wind and have excellent concealment technique. I am also very careful when I enter and leave. Otherwise, how could I have been able to peacefully cultivate in the Five Peaks Mountain for hundreds of years under the control of the six-tailed spiritual monkey king? In the underground cave of a mountain in the middle of the Five Peaks Mountain, a figure in a black robe with a long tail peeked out from behind the black robe. His eyes were darting around, and there were 3 tufts of long hair at the corner of his mouth. There was a smug look on his face. He was indeed very smug. It was very difficult for ordinary beasts to survive in a spirit vein that had an owner. There would definitely be a huge battle. However, he was occupying an advanced grade 5 spirit vein. There was abundant spirit chi and no lack of resources. His cultivation could be said to be smooth. Naturally, he was very happy. Although he couldn't openly admit that the Five Peaks Mountain belonged to him, he didn't care. As a rat demon that had just stepped into the primordial soul realm, he was already satisfied. He still hoped that he could stay here for hundreds or thousands of years to accumulate and grow. Perhaps in the future, he could really live in this place and become the true owner of the Five Peaks Mountain. Thinking of this, he turned his tail excitedly and swung it slightly on a huge rock. Rumble! A piece of white stone fell. He took the opportunity to roll up a piece of white stone. He opened his mouth and revealed 4 hard teeth. Then, he began to devour the white stone. Soon, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face. This white stone was actually a huge spirit stone. Its grade was not low either. It was at the middle grade. The core was even at the advanced grade. It could be said that it was the thing that the rat demon liked to grind its teeth on. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, it felt a slight tremor. Inside the cave, pieces of spirit stones began to fall because of the tremor. What's going on? A trace of doubt could not help but flash through its lively eyes. He was very confident in his control of his strength. The swing of his tail could at most knock down a small piece of spirit stone. It would not cause such a huge vibration or even cause the cave to collapse. Roar. Faintly, he heard a furious roar from the outside world. Roar, roar, roar. The angry roars of the spirit monkeys were sharp and ear-piercing. They rose and fell one after another, causing the cave to shake violently. Is it that group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys? It was only at this moment that it realized that this tremor was not caused by itself, but was caused by the multi-tailed spirit monkey outside. With so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys roaring at the same time, there was no lack of 5-tailed spirit monkeys. These 5-tailed spirit monkeys were equivalent to great demons of the primordial soul realm. In the entire Five Peaks Mountain, there were as many as 10 5-tailed spirit monkeys. At this time, almost all of them had been mobilized. Could it be that they had encountered an invasion? Chapter 809. At the thought of this, Old Shoe's lively eyes flashed with excitement. He hurriedly leaped lightly, and in a flash, he rushed up to the high platform that was more than 10 meters long. Then, he shrank his body and transformed into a golden rat the size of a fist. He directly crawled out of a small hole. Although he was comfortable in the Five Peaks Mountain, he was not used to the multi-tailed spirit monkey that had been abusing him. He had long wanted to teach it a lesson if he had the chance in the future. Now that he saw an enemy invading and attacking the group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys, he naturally became interested and wanted to watch the show. Just as the golden rat that Old Shoe had transformed into walked out of the cave, there was a loud boom. A huge figure crashed down heavily. This figure's entire body was almost shattered. The 5 rows of tails spread out in all directions, and the pressure was so great that even a rock collapsed into pieces. It was a 5-tailed spirit monkey. Moreover, it was the Wu-Tong spirit monkey that was considered strong among the 5-tailed spirit monkeys and had reached the intermediate primordial soul realm. However, at this moment it seemed to be dead. Old Shu was a little confused. After carefully approaching, he quickly confirmed that his long-term neighbor, the Wu-Tong spirit monkey, was dead. He felt sad for a moment. After all, the two of them had been neighbors for hundreds of years. However, he quickly became cheerful. It was good that this fellow had died. He recalled that more than 100 years ago, he had once again accidentally revealed himself and was discovered by the other party. If he had not reacted quickly, he would have been torn apart by the other party. Roar! An earth-shattering roar sounded. Immediately after, a spirit monkey that was completely golden in color and had 6 rows of tails on its back appeared. At the same time, hundreds and thousands of spirit monkeys all revealed extremely ferocious expressions. Their auras overlapped as they rapidly pounced on a small figure floating in the distance. Even the 6-tailed spirit monkey king has been mobilized? And there are so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys that are at least 3-tailed and above. I remember that the last time the multi-tailed spirit monkeys were so shocked was when the poisonous dragon attacked. That poisonous dragon was a demon king at the pinnacle of the primordial soul realm. Even it had suffered greatly in the face of the multi-tailed spirit monkeys. This human can actually cause such a commotion among the multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Could it be that he is another primordial soul realm expert? Old Shu was surprised, but his small and intelligent eyes were wide open. No, that can't be right. This human is only at the primordial spirit realm primary stage. Intermediate primordial spirit realm. You dare to barge into the core area of the 5 Peaks Mountain and compete with the multi-tailed spirit monkeys with such an immortal technique? However, his expression soon changed when he noticed that the strength of Ziyue's celestial technique aura was different from what he had imagined. He was even more surprised. He dared to trespass into the spiritual land of the multi-tailed spirit monkeys with such strength? Was he seeking death? While the multi-tailed spirit monkeys loved to consume spirit fruits and spirit peaches, and were even equipped with excellent means of cultivating spirit peaches, they were equally ferocious. They could tear apart tigers and leopards and devour their flesh and blood. They were extremely murderous, and were even capable of joining forces in battle. Their combat prowess and destructive power were both extremely strong. A human cultivator who was only at the intermediate primordial spirit realm. Just as it was feeling a little disappointed, it suddenly saw the human cultivator stretch out his hand and casually strike with his sword. When the sword was unleashed, it was as if the wind and clouds changed color. It was extremely fast. Boom! Countless multi-tailed spirit monkeys, including the 5-tailed spirit monkeys and the 6-tailed spirit monkey king, who were roaring in terror, suddenly froze in midair. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Then, with a soft sound, the flesh and blood of all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys instantly crumbled into pieces, including the 7 or 8 5-tailed spirit monkeys and the 6-tailed spirit monkey king, who had reached the late primordial spirit realm. Boom! 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 Endless flesh and blood fell from the sky and sprinkled all over the trees and grass. The mountain emitted a scorching aura of essence. Some of the vegetation seemed to be unable to withstand the turbulent energy and were burned alive and withered to death. These spirit monkeys were not weak. Even a drop of their blood contained a huge amount of energy. Naturally, it was not something that ordinary vegetation could withstand. How is this possible? Old Shu's eyes widened in disbelief. That human had only struck with his sword. He did not even see the image of the sword light, and yet the entire group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys was wiped out. Not a single one survived. Old Shu was stunned. What kind of shocking scene was this? It was simply unimaginable. It left a deep impression on him, and he would never forget it. The human cultivator who had attacked was naturally Ziyue. This group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys had occupied the Five Peaks Mountain for many years and had long regarded this place as their territory. They saw any foreign species that stepped into this place as their enemy. Therefore, as soon as Bai Ziyue revealed himself, the multi-tailed spiritual monkeys attacked him crazily and tried to kill him. After he had killed several multi-tailed spirit monkeys to intimidate them, the group of monkeys seemed to have gone mad. They desperately called out to him, and countless multi-tailed spirit monkeys rushed over, including the six-tailed spirit monkey king. When he saw this, Bai Ziyue naturally wouldn't hold back, and his sword flew out. The supreme Dao technique, the heart sword technique, flashed. With just one strike, almost all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys were killed. Faced with this, Ziyue's expression did not change. He was very calm. Although he could only unleash an attack at the level of an extreme state due to the suppression of heaven and earth, this attack at the level of an extreme state was already the strongest and most powerful attack in the world. Even if the six-tailed spirit monkey was at the peak of the primordial soul realm, it would not be able to escape from his sword, let alone the six-tailed spirit monkey that was at the late stage of the primordial soul realm. Killing 1,300 multi-tailed spirit monkeys with one strike. Although these multi-tailed spirit monkeys have different strengths, it has increased my spirit power by a lot. I now have 500 million spirit power again. Ziyue glanced at his attribute panel and felt satisfied. Although 500 million spirit power was not as good as when he was at his peak, it had increased his spirit power by a lot. It had also increased his foundation and confidence, as expected of the Dark North sect leader. I thought that there would be a fierce battle to get rid of this group of multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Who would have thought that the Dark North sect leader would be able to get rid of so many multi-tailed spirit monkeys so easily? At this moment, Mo Fan, True Supremacy Mo Fan, and the others quickly flew over and exclaimed. Even though I had guessed that it would not be difficult for the sect leader to get rid of these multi-tailed spirit monkeys with his strength, I did not expect it to be so easy. Jiang Taixian was also shocked. That sword strike had also stunned him. Even though he had learned from many aspects that Ziyue was actually much younger than him, it did not go against his endless admiration for Ziyue in the world of immortal spells where the strong were respected. This sword strike is nothing. Ziyue shook his head calmly. Although that sword was powerful, he had only used 10% of his strength. After all, even if he had used all his strength, he could only reach the level of an extreme state. The difference in strength was not that great. Therefore, he naturally knew what to do. It seemed that the effect was not bad. Dark North sect leader, leave the rest to us. To set up the formation, we need to observe and understand the entire Five Peaks Mountain. At the same time, we can also get rid of the remaining multi-tailed spirit monkeys. Master Calm Heart said with a smile. Ziyue's previous attack had almost killed all the multi-tailed spirit monkeys above the Golden Core realm in the entire Five Peaks Mountain. Therefore, he had the confidence to say that. At least, as long as it was not in existence above the primordial soul realm, his strength was enough to deal with it. There's no hurry. Ziyue waved his hand and said, if I don't get rid of all the small fries, how can I be at ease with you moving around here? As he said that, he swept his gaze and looked at a bush below. Oh no, I've been discovered. Old Shu shuddered and turned pale with fright. He quickly turned around and fled. His speed was really at the peak of what he could achieve. In his opinion, Ziyue was too terrifying. The powerful, neighbor, multi-tailed spirit monkeys that he had cursed countless times had been easily slaughtered. He did not think that he would be able to escape if he was caught. However, even though he was very fast and his body was like a phantom, and he was confident that even the six-tailed spirit monkey king at the advanced primordial soul realm would not be able to catch up with him in a short time, in Ziyue's eyes, The speed that he was so proud of was laughable. He only pointed slightly, and a ball of spiritual light shot out. Chi in an instant, his body stiffened and he stood still on the spot, unable to move. Baiziyu then stretched out his hand, and a transparent space immediately came down from above, trapping it on the spot. Spare me, Senior. I'm only a rat demon, and I'm no threat to you and the rest. If you let me go, I'll definitely leave without a word. I won't disturb you at all, and I won't dare to reveal your whereabouts or news. Old Shu screamed in horror. The golden rat's face was full of misery. Your desire to live is quite strong. Fan Qingyu chuckled and could not help but comment. Your desire to live is very strong indeed. However, what surprised me the most is that this is a rare treasure-seeking mouse. It's born with an incomparable sensitivity to treasures. It's said that wherever a treasure-seeking mouse appears, there must be a great treasure nearby. True Venerate Mo Fan looked at the golden rat in the space, and could not help but smile. Treasure-seeking mouse? The eyes of the surrounding people lit up when they heard this. Do you know if there are any great treasures in the Five Peaks Mountain? Jiang Taixian asked impatiently. Great treasures? Old Shu's face changed and his whiskers trembled. He quickly shook his head and said, No great treasures, no great treasures. It seems like this treasure-seeking mouse is not very honest. Fan Qingyu looked at Ziyue mockingly and said, The others were all smart. They could easily tell from the other party's expression that he was lying. Tell me where the great treasures are and you may have a chance to live. Otherwise you'll die. Ziyue could not help but say. Even though he did not think that the treasure-seeking mouse could really find any great treasures, there was no harm in giving it a try. Great treasures, there is indeed a great treasure. Old Shu's neck shrunk, and his face was immediately filled with regret. Obviously, he was regretting that he had compromised so quickly. However, his life was more important. He could not guarantee that if he did not tell them, he would not have a chance to live. Tell me, where is it? The others immediately became excited. Searching for treasures and obtaining opportunities. It could be said that almost every cultivator yearned for it. In the world of immortal spells, there were too many people who had soared to the sky and become extraordinary because of a certain opportunity or treasure. Although they were very strong and had long passed the time of rising because of treasures, they still hoped that they would have the opportunity to obtain a great treasure inheritance. At the very least, they would have more things to talk about and experience. There is a huge axe in the rock of the main peak of the Five Peaks Mountain. This huge axe is very powerful and seems to have a consciousness of its own. Whenever a cultivator approaches it, it will shoot out a sharp light to attack. I, Old Shu, have tried 100 times, and the most recent time, I only managed to get within 100 meters of the huge axe. The treasure-seeking mouse said hurriedly with a hint of fear in its eyes. Even now, when it thought about the sharp light emitted by the huge axe, it felt uncomfortable all over. Huge axe? It has a consciousness of its own? Everyone was shocked when they heard that, and a look of horror appeared on their faces. Numinous treasure? Could this so-called great treasure be the legendary numinous treasure? That was because only numinous treasures could have a consciousness of their own and actively display their power to resist cultivators from approaching. Given the strength of the treasure-hunting spirit rat, even an early-stage primordial spirit realm rat demon could not get within 100 meters of the gigantic axe. One could only imagine the grade of the gigantic axe. Even among numinous treasures, it was not considered weak. Even if it was not a superior grade numinous treasure, it was definitely at the peak of the inferior grade or even a middle grade numinous treasure. Lead the way. Baiziyu extended his hand and tapped the treasure-seeking spirit mouse. He was not afraid that the treasure-seeking spirit mouse would try to escape from him. With his speed and strength, even if the treasure-seeking mouse was at the late-stage Essence Soul Realm, or even at the peak of the Essence Soul Realm, He was confident that he could capture and kill the other party within a breath, let alone the fact that the treasure-seeking mouse was only at the early stage essence soul realm. The treasure-seeking mouse seemed to know that as well, and it responded obediently and respectfully. Then, it led Ziyue and the others and quickly rushed towards a mountain peak. This mountain peak was the most majestic and towering of the 5 peaks mountain. It was also the tallest one. Its aura was so majestic that it seemed to be able to hold up the sky and pierce through the clouds. Under the lead of the treasure-seeking mouse, the group first flew to the mountainside and then stopped in front of a hole that was only as thick as an arm. The huge axe is 1,000 meters deep in this hole, the treasure-seeking mouse said immediately. Are there no other holes? Jiang Taixin asked with a darkened face. How are they going to enter a hole of this size? Although the size manipulation remarkable power was not complicated, it was not something that just anyone could learn. After all, this remarkable power did not increase a cultivator's combat strength by much. Jiang Taixin happened to be a cultivator who had not learned this remarkable power, so it was impossible for him to pass through the hole that was as thick as an arm. Chapter 8:10. Nope. This mountain is 1,000 meters deep and shockingly hard. It took me nearly half a year to dig out this small hole bit by bit. The treasure-hunting spirit mouse shook its head. Jiang Taixin was not convinced. He immediately attacked with his magic weapon. Boom! A dull sound was heard as a small hole was blasted open in the mountain. It was only 3 meters from end to end. This is the black crimson ink stone. It's extremely hard and can't be broken with weapons. It also has the effect of blocking the detection of the primordial spirit. Even with the strength of my primordial spirit, I can't go any further than 5 meters. At this moment, Master Calmheart seemed to have discovered something. Her expression changed as she hurriedly spoke. Hearing this, the others began to probe further with their soul power. I can only reach 2 meters, Fan Qingyu spoke first. Even though she had a strong foundation and great potential, she was only at the peak of the God realm. Her soul was the weakest among them. Even Master Calmheart, who had reached the peak of the Golden Core realm, could only reach 5 meters. It was already shocking that he could reach 2 meters. 7 meters! Jiang Taixin said helplessly with a dark face. He thought he would be able to reach much deeper than Master Calmheart after he had been baptized by the heavenly tribulation. Now that he had reached the peak of the Golden Core realm and had the strength of an emperor or higher, he could only reach 2 meters deeper than Master Calmheart. I can only reach 15 meters, Master Calmheart said. True Venerate Mo Fan's expression was equally ugly. 15 meters was not a long distance. Jiang Taixin was 7 meters deep. His cultivation was so much higher than Jiang Taishuan's, and his soul had transformed into a primordial spirit. However, he could only reach twice as far as Jiang Taixin, although it was possible that the deeper he went, the stronger the spirit-forbidding spirit of the black crimson inkstone was. He still could not accept it. I went a little deeper. I reached 80 meters. Ziyue shook his head when he saw the others looking at him. The others were surprised. Ziyue's cultivation was lower than Mo Fan's, yet he could reach 80 meters deep. However, when they thought of his strength, they realized something. How do we get in? Jiang Taixin asked helplessly. It's all right. Ziyue shook his head indifferently. With a wave of his hand, he took everyone into the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. With a thought, the Kunwu Golden Pagoda shrunk to the size of a speck of dust and rushed into the cave. This treasure is actually of a higher grade than that enormous axe? Old Shu was feeling a little smug. Although it had been captured, it still hoped to see Ziyue and the others suffer. Who would have thought that it would be sucked into this inexplicable treasure in the blink of an eye? Suddenly, it shuddered and was stunned. As a treasure-seeking spirit mouse, Its spiritual sense towards treasure glows was extremely sharp. This was its innate talent, and also the reason why it was revered by countless cultivators in the star boundary. Previously, when Ziyue had not used this treasure, because it had already recognized him as its master and its spiritual energy was hidden, he did not notice it. He only instinctively felt that there should be a great treasure on him. But now that this treasure had been revealed, and it was still inside the treasure, it immediately felt a difference. When it compared the treasure, it realized that this golden pagoda was of a higher grade than the giant axe it had discovered before. It was stunned at once. Of course, this Kunwu golden pagoda is a superior grade spirit treasure. Jiang Taixin replied with a proud face. A superior grade spirit treasure? Old Shu was stunned and looked at Ziyue with even more awe. To be able to control a superior grade spirit treasure, and most importantly, to be able to make it recognize him as its master, how amazing was such an existence. It was no wonder that it had been so easily discovered and restrained. Originally, it still wanted to find a chance to quickly escape, but now it really did not dare to. Because it knew that it could not escape at all, and if it really made a move, it would definitely not have a good time. The chances of it dying were very high. The cave was deep, and there were several forks in the middle. There were many traps, up and down, left and right, and many dead ends. These were all set up by the treasure-seeking spirit mouse in the early days as a precaution. After more than 10 minutes, Ziyue and the others finally passed through and appeared in a huge cave. Even in this space, the range of my divine sense has not increased at all. Jiang Taixin sighed with emotion. Suddenly, he was stunned and looked into the depths of the cave. A ball of dim light was faintly visible, and where the dim light shone, there was a stone wall. There seemed to be some colored pictures on the stone wall, as if they were recording something. The group could not help but go forward and began to carefully observe. This seems to be some picture records left behind by the ancient human tribe in the ancient times. From the picture records, it seems to be a human tribe that originally lived here peacefully, eating raw meat and drinking blood, and hunting for a living. Suddenly, a demon god broke into their tribe, and after a fierce battle, the tribe was almost wiped out. The leader of the tribe seemed to have paid a huge price to enter a secret place, and then brought out a giant axe from the secret place. Finally, with the help of the giant axe, he killed the demon god. Master Calm Heart said in surprise, "Could it be that this giant axe is the one that the leader brought out? That leader looked like a savage who drank blood. How strong could he be? How could he activate a spirit treasure?" Jiang Taixin could not help but ask. From what the treasure-hunting spirit mouse had said, they had roughly determined that the giant axe was at the level of a spirit treasure. However, it was definitely not an easy task to activate a spiritual treasure. Just the protective treasure light alone was not something that ordinary cultivators could resist. Although the treasure-hunting spirit mouse's combat power was not necessarily strong, it was a powerful demon in the early primordial soul realm. Even so, it could not get close to the spirit treasure giant axe, which showed how difficult it was. However, from the picture, the leader of the tribe was able to activate the giant axe and unleash super strong combat power, which naturally surprised him. Who said that the human tribe was weak? If you had noticed the prey that they had hunted before, you would know how terrifying they were. Among them, there were saber-toothed tigers, multi-horned beasts, black-blooded pythons, violent earth bears, three-headed dragons and other strange beasts. The saber-toothed tigers, multi-horned beasts, and violent earth bears were all ancient strange beasts with great strength. Once they reached adulthood, the weakest of them would have the strength of a golden core realm cultivator. As for the black-blooded pythons, if you look carefully, you will see that they have 9 white lines on their bodies. That means that their bloodlines have evolved 9 times. They are comparable to cultivators at the peak of the golden core realm and can advance to the primordial soul realm at any time. As for the three-headed dragons, They are even stronger. They are natural-born mutated divine beasts that are not weaker than real dragons. They definitely have the combat power of a primordial soul realm cultivator. With so many powerful beasts as food for the human tribe, you can imagine that their individual strength is definitely not weak. Their leader would naturally be even stronger. He might even have the combat power of a peak primordial soul realm cultivator. It is very possible that he could subdue a spirit treasure and unleash the power of the spirit treasure. As a primordial soul realm cultivator, real Mo Fan was naturally more knowledgeable. He quickly retorted. Hearing this, Jiang Taishuan's expression changed. He realized that his knowledge was too shallow. What I want to know more is the location of the secret place that the leader entered. Since the spirit treasure giant axe appeared, there must be other treasures. Ziyue said indifferently as he looked at the treasure-hunting spirit mouse. He did not think that it would not be interested in the secret place after seeing the map. After all, the treasure-hunting spirit mouse was naturally very curious and sensitive to treasures. On top of that, it was extremely talented. It would be the easiest to find the location of the secret place. There is no harm in telling you about this secret place. It is actually on the top of this mountain, but I can't find its exact location. It is hidden in an unknown space. Without special treasures or knowing the location of the space, it is impossible to enter. Perhaps it will only reveal itself at a certain time. However, I have been here for hundreds of years, but I have never felt any spatial fluctuations. I can only vaguely sense the location closest to it with my talent. The treasure-hunting spirit mouse sneered. Is that so? Bai Ziyue nodded with a thoughtful look on his face. The location of this secret place was similar to the Dragon Palace. It was hidden in the depths of the void outside the space membrane. If it was not at a certain time or when there was some treasure leading it, it would be impossible to find it, let alone enter it. Even if one's strength had reached the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, or even the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, and stepped into the turbulence of the void to investigate, the billions of dust particles and countless stars would not be able to pinpoint the exact location of the mystic ground, let alone enter it and obtain the treasures within. Perhaps when I break through to the spirit-severing realm, or when my cultivation of space reaches a certain level, I will be able to detect it. Ziyue thought silently. He was not in a hurry. As long as his sect was established here, no matter when this secret place appeared, it would definitely belong to him or the sect that he founded. Looking past the image, the group soon saw a giant axe standing on top of an altar. The body of the giant axe alone was 30 feet long. It was green all over, but the blade light was a little dim. There was a thick and long handle on it. It was dark red in color and was 100 feet long. The entire giant axe was majestic and huge, and it was filled with an indescribable domineering aura. Vaguely, there were faint rays of dim light emitting from it. At this moment, they realized that the dim light they had seen before was emitted from the giant axe. This giant axe is indeed a numinous treasure. It is a middle-grade numinous treasure. Jiang Taishan exclaimed and rushed forward impatiently. Buzz! Almost at the moment when he got close, the giant axe shone brightly and a strong oppressive force immediately descended. The terrifying pressure practically pressed him down in an instant. The further you go, the greater the pressure. I, Old Shu, am in the primordial soul realm, but I have only recently reached the 100-meter mark, let alone you, a golden core realm cultivator. The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse laughed and gloated. This is the pressure of a numinous treasure. The stronger one's spiritual will, the stronger their resistance. With the strength of this numinous treasure, even a cultivator in the primordial soul realm in the late stage would find it difficult to get close to it, let alone a cultivator in the early stage of the primordial soul realm. As he said that, Mo Fan looked at Ziyue with a strange gaze, except for such a freak. Even if Ziyue's immortal spell realm was lower than his, He believed that Ziyue would definitely be able to get close to the giant axe, intimidate the weapon spirit of the giant axe, and take it down. Thinking of this, he was filled with endless emotions. Perhaps this was the son of Providence, a person with great fortune. Otherwise, why would the Five Peaks Mountain have stood here for so many years without anyone thinking of taking over this place and making it their base? Why would the group of multi-tailed spiritual monkeys have occupied this place for thousands of years without discovering this numinous treasure giant axe? And yet, Fang Xinjian found this place with the help of the treasure-hunting spiritual mouse as soon as he arrived? It was not that he did not have any greed in his heart. He wanted to inform the sect and the sect master, but when he thought of Ziyue's strength, he felt deeply powerless and completely crushed that trace of greed. Especially the attack that Ziyue had made previously. Although its destructive power was still at the level of the Supreme Realm, its area of effect was so large that even their sect master would not be able to do it. In other words, if Fang Xinjian could break through the suppression of the Great Tao, his actual combat strength would surpass their sect master Zhou Gudong's. Such an existence was too terrifying. In addition, their sect master had specially warned him before, so he naturally did not dare to act rashly. You can all try. The numinous treasure has a spirit. If you are chosen by the weapon spirit of the numinous treasure, even if you are just an ordinary person, you will be able to get close and pick up this giant axe. Ziyue said with a smile. Sect Master, what do you mean? Master Jingxin's heart skipped a beat. Then, if I am also fated, this numinous treasure will belong to Mo Fan's true supremacy, was also surprised. You can take it. Ziyue smiled faintly and looked slightly at Fan Qingyu. Numinous treasures had spirits, and numinous treasures could communicate with each other. Although the consciousness of the giant axe was not as agile as the weapon spirit of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, it already had basic intelligence. At this moment, he had said this because the weapon spirit of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda had already told him that the weapon spirit of the giant axe had taken a liking to Fan Qingyu and wanted to recognize her as its master. Since that was the case, he was naturally willing to encourage them to give it a try. However, on second thought, it was normal. Fan Qingyu's talent was already peerless. If one were to calculate it carefully, it was far superior to Ziyue's own talent. In addition, now that her Dao body had reached the perfection stage, her every move was extraordinary and could trigger the great Dao of heaven and earth. She could be called the great Dao's child, the darling of heaven and earth. It was very normal that the weapon spirit of the giant axe would take a liking to her. Great. Then let's give it a try. Mo Fan's true supremacy was overjoyed. He took a deep breath and hurriedly stepped forward carefully. He was already looking forward to it. Chapter 8:11. Jiang Taixin, on the other hand, could only grimace and look dejected. His previous attempt had already proven that the weapon spirit of the giant axe did not approve of him. When the pressure of the treasure landed on his body, he immediately fell to the ground with his face covered in dust. Naturally, he was not in a good mood. Mo Fan slowly walked forward and stepped into the range of the treasure in the next moment. Buzz! In an instant, the giant axe glowed brightly, and a terrifying pressure fell on him. Not only did it affect his body, but it also affected his mind. Humph! Mo Fan's expression froze. He harumphed coldly and took it head-on. The pressure of the weapon spirit of the giant axe might be very useful to Jiang Taixin, but he was a cultivator at the peak of the intermediate stage of the primordial soul realm. His primordial soul had undergone the baptism of the lightning tribulation and was extraordinary. Naturally, his endurance was much higher than the opponent's. Therefore, when the pressure suddenly fell on him, his expression did not change as he continued to move forward. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. The pressure of the weapon spirit was more than 300 meters wide, but Mo Fan's true supremacy kept moving forward without stopping. He quickly crossed 100 meters, 200 meters, and then surpassed the limit of the treasure-seeking spirit mouse. He was only 100 meters away from the giant axe. What a powerful aura! This pressure is like an ultimate primordial soul realm cultivator releasing all of his aura to target me. It makes every step extremely difficult. Mo Fan's true supremacy exclaimed. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Even he felt that this kind of pressure was difficult to bear. Fortunately, he was still calm. He knew that it was not easy to obtain the treasure. Therefore, he maintained the flow of his primordial soul to resist the pressure. 80 meters, 60 meters, 40 meters, the closer he got, the more terrifying the pressure became. At this moment, he felt as if the whole world was against him. The closer he got, the stronger the pressure became. Every step he took was difficult. Charge! Mo Fan's true highness let out a furious roar. He fully unleashed his strength and used all kinds of spells to advance another 20 meters. However, he was running out of energy by then. He was staggering as he moved forward. Huff, huff. It's too difficult. Even with my strength and the strength of my primordial spirit, I can only get within 20 meters of it. Any closer and I'll be completely helpless. Mo Fan's true highness panted heavily. He quickly withdrew from the area where the treasure was located with a displeased look. Furthermore, I have a feeling that if I really step within 10 meters of that spiritual treasure, that giant axe will automatically activate its protective profound light, which can pose a huge threat to me. Thinking of this, he could not help but shake his head. If he gave it his all, he might be able to get close to the numinous treasure giant axe. He might even be able to grasp the numinous treasure and refine it. However, spirit treasures had spirits. If they were unwilling to recognize a person as their master, they would resist violently. He estimated that if he came within 10 meters of the giant axe, the tool spirit of the giant axe would even activate its main body and launch a thunderous attack. As for the thunderous attack of a middle-grade numinous treasure, even if there was no cultivator controlling it, it was still extremely powerful. It was not something he could withstand. Therefore, under that unseen sense of danger, he finally gave up and retreated. Let me try. Seeing this, Master Jingxin let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly said. He also knew that spirit treasures had spirit. If he could get the other party's approval, even a mortal could refine the spirit treasure and use it. However, he knew very well that it was a very slim possibility. Even Mo Fan's true highness had not succeeded. The chances of him succeeding were even lower. However, with the opportunity in front of him, how could he be satisfied if he did not try? Therefore, he hurriedly went forward and gathered his aura and began to move forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, compared to Mo Fan's true highness, his strength was a lot weaker. He only moved forward 90 meters before retreating, panting heavily. The pressure of this numinous treasure is indeed too strong. It's not something we can peek at. Master Jingxin smiled helplessly, but he was not disappointed. He already knew that his chances of obtaining the numinous treasure were not high, so he was naturally much calmer. In his opinion, only Taoist North Ming Ziue had full confidence in subduing this numinous treasure. I wasn't ready just now. Let me try again. I don't believe that I can't go farther than Master Jingxin. Seeing that Master Calm Heart had also gone 90 meters deep, Jiang Taixian could not help but grumble aloud, Master Calm Heart. He did not expect the numinous treasure to suddenly unleash its pressure. Otherwise, he would not have been knocked down as soon as he stepped into the range of the numinous treasure. Then, he began to move forward while staring at the pressure. This time, he was holding back his strength, so he used all his strength at the beginning and raised his aura to the peak to resist the pressure with all his might. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters, soon, he reached a distance of 100 meters, and then after that it became difficult for him to walk. Finally, he walked 190 meters before he could no longer continue and turn back. I told you, with my strength, it is impossible for me to only take one step. 190 meters is more than double the distance Master Jingxin has walked. Jiang Taixin panted slightly and said proudly. Seeing this, the treasure-hunting spiritual mouse Old Shu could not help but look at him again. It should be noted that even it had tried its best to walk only 200 meters, which was only a dozen meters more than Jiang Taixin. However, one of them had already reached the early stage of the primordial soul realm, while the other was only at the peak of the golden core realm. The difference in strength was huge. It seems that among us, only sect leader North Ming has a chance of obtaining this numinous treasure. True Venerate Mo Fan looked at Ziyue and said emotionally. Of course, Senior North Ming is an ultimate realm expert. The pressure of a mere middle-grade numinous treasure may be able to stop us, but it definitely can't stop Senior. Jiang Taixin hurriedly replied with a face full of pride. Since Bai Ziyue had saved him when he was overcoming the heavenly tribulation, he'd made the decision to swear loyalty and follow Bai Ziyue's lead. Now that true Venerate Mo Fan was praising Ziyue, he was naturally happy and proud. Qingyu, you should go and try too. Ziyue looked at Fan Qingyu and said with a smile. Me? I can't. Even Martial Uncle Mo Fan and Master Jingxin can't get close to it, let alone me. Fan Qingyu was startled when she heard this, and quickly waved her hand. Give it a try. Maybe this numinous treasure will take a fancy to you? Ziyue said with a faint smile. How is that possible? Fan Qingyu hurriedly shook her head. After thinking for a while, she finally compromised and said coquettishly, You just want to see me make a fool of myself, right? Then, with a stretch of his hand, a celestial lotus was summoned and floated above her head. Her body was overflowing with light, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Following it, the heavens and earth changed all of a sudden, as if Buddhas were playing music and deities were beating drums. The rules of the heavens and earth were revealed in front of everyone like thin ropes. The Tao flesh was formed naturally, and the rules of Tao were revealed. It was the first time Fan Qingyu had displayed her Tao flesh after achieving the greater success stage. It had triggered a rare phenomenon and caused the heavens and earth to chime. Following it, she carefully took the first step, followed by the second step, the third step. A trace of surprise appeared on her face almost immediately. It was easy. She felt relaxed. There was no pressure or burden. It felt like she was walking on a small road in the countryside, relaxed and natural. She soon surpassed the 90-meter distance that Master Jingxin had covered. She continued to move forward and reach the 100-meter mark. How is this possible? Could it be that her soul's endurance is stronger than ours? Master Jingxin and the others were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Even the weakest among them was at the peak golden core realm. Their strength was not unparalleled, but they were definitely stronger than Fan Qingyu, who was only at the peak divine realm. In the end, not only did she have an easy time, she even surpassed Master Jingxin and reached the 100-meter mark. Could it be? The few of them were extremely strong, and their thoughts were quick. They immediately came up with a guess. The spiritual treasure had recognized her as its master. Could it be that Fan Qingyu had an easy time because the spiritual treasure had already decided to recognize her as its master? Senior Baiming, did you already know? Jiang Taixin asked in confusion. Mo Fan also wore a concerned look. He obviously wanted to know the answer too. Ziyue smiled without saying a word. Fan Qingyu immediately realized something even if she was slow. She immediately wore a surprised and joyful look. But very quickly, her footsteps paused again, and she actually slowly turned back. What's wrong? Seeing this, Bai Ziyue quickly went forward and asked. The spiritual treasure should belong to you. I don't want it. Fan Qingyu shook her head and said, Is there a need to draw such a clear line between you and me? Ziyue frowned and said, Besides, the spiritual treasure has a spirit. It's its freedom to choose who its master is. Now, the spiritual treasure of the giant axe obviously recognizes you as its master. Only you can completely refine the giant axe and unleash its power. But Fan Qingyu was about to say more, but Ziyue quickly interrupted her and said, That's enough, no more buts. This spirit treasure has a spirit, so it's their instinct to choose its owner. Not to mention that this giant axe's spirit has already begun to awaken its wisdom. When it realizes that you have a natural Taoist body, it naturally knows what to choose. But it's not certain if the spiritual treasure will really recognize me as its master. What if there are any unexpected changes or dangers? Fan Qingyu said hesitantly. There won't be any danger. Ziyue smiled and shook his head. However, after thinking for a while, he said, If you're really worried, I'll be right behind you. If there are any unexpected changes, I'll be the first to take action. Hearing this, she nodded obediently and once again walked towards the direction of the spirit treasure giant axe. Bai Ziyue, on the other hand, followed behind him with an indifferent expression. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Unlike Fan Qingyu, who felt relaxed, Bai Ziyue also felt a wave of pressure. Even though this pressure was nothing to him at his current level of strength. 100 steps, 120 steps, 150 steps, Bai Ziyue had a calm expression on his face, as though the suppressive force couldn't affect his emotions at all. This was actually normal. Although his cultivation level was low, at the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm, he was not as strong as real Mo Fan, who was at the peak of the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. However, with his current strength, he could easily resist the pressure of the spiritual treasure. Not to mention, he was one of the few cultivators in the world who had a perfect soul and a golden primordial spirit. His resistance to the pressure was even stronger. Therefore, compared to Fan Qingyu's relaxed state, Bai Ziyue was also very calm. 200 meters, 230 meters, 260 meters. Soon, the two of them stepped into the area that was only 50 meters away from the giant axe. The suppressive force was so strong that even Bai Ziyue felt a little uncomfortable. Just as he was about to use some tricks, the Kunwu golden pagoda on his body suddenly shook slightly and quickly blocked the pressure that was enveloping the area. Thus, the two of them successfully got within 10 meters of the giant axe. Buzz! Suddenly, a stream of light flashed from the giant axe's spiritual treasure, and a stream of light quickly rushed out. This stream of light was the consciousness core of the giant axe's spiritual treasure. Once the consciousness core was refined, one would be able to control the spiritual treasure almost immediately and use it as one's own arm. This, Fan Qingyu was a little hesitant as she looked at Ziyue. Hurry up and refine it. Don't worry about me. I already have a spiritual treasure. I don't need one more. If I really needed a spiritual treasure, I wouldn't have exchanged the demonic saber with your sect leader Zhou Gutong. Not to mention, with my skills, it doesn't make much of a difference whether I have a spiritual treasure or not. Ziyue comforted her. All right then. Fan Qingyu hesitated for a moment, but her expression quickly became determined. Then, with a thought, she pointed out a soul mark and placed it on the consciousness core of the spiritual treasure. Almost instantly, Fan Qingyu felt a connection between herself and the giant axe. It was as if with a thought, he could activate the giant axe's spiritual treasure and release a terrifying power. At this moment, Fan Qingyu seemed to have come to her senses. She asked in surprise, Did I just refine this spiritual treasure giant axe? It was unbelievably smooth. Yes, you refined it. Now you can freely activate the giant axe spiritual treasure and take it away. Ziyue explained with a smile. This spiritual treasure automatically recognized its owner. It was completely different from refining it with one's blood or other forceful means. Not only was it extremely fast, but there was no need for any special means. One could release a power with one's mind. Chapter 8:12. Ziyue knew this very well because he had experienced it before. Fan Qingyu had never controlled a spiritual treasure before, but she quickly understood the situation through the weapon spirit of the giant axe. She waved her hand and the giant axe shone brightly. Then, it shrunk rapidly to the size of a palm, and she held it in her hand. This spiritual treasure is a middle-grade spiritual treasure called the Heaven Punishment Axe. It can punish on behalf of the heavens and is extremely powerful. My current cultivation level is still very low, and I can only barely activate it. However, the power of its attack is already comparable to the full power attack of a Golden Core Emperor. If I break through to the primordial soul realm, I can even use this Heaven Punishment Axe to break through the suppression of the heavens and earth and unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state. Fan Qingyu's face revealed a hint of surprise as she spoke excitedly. The power of this spiritual treasure had indeed shocked her. It had allowed her combat strength to soar by more than a few levels. Furthermore, this was not the full power of the Heaven Punishment Axe. Due to the restriction of her strength, she could only unleash an attack of this level. If she reached the primordial soul realm, she might even be able to unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state. What if she became stronger? How strong would the ultimate power of the Heaven Punishment Axe be? Everyone was shocked. True venerated Mo Fan's face was even more serious. He could not help but ask, this Heaven Punishment Axe can break through the suppression of the Great Path and allow a primordial soul realm cultivator to unleash an attack that surpasses the extreme state? The extreme state was the seal of the astral world and the suppression of the Great Path. No matter how talented a cultivator was, as long as he had not broken through to the spirit-severing stage or created a heaven-breaking Dao spell, he would not be able to unleash an attack that surpassed the limit. For example, Ziyue could already unleash an attack of the extreme state when he was in the early stage of the primordial soul realm. However, now that he had broken through to the middle stage of the primordial soul realm, even if his destructive power, attack range, and attack speed were much stronger, the actual power that he could unleash was still at the extreme state. This was because it was sealed by the heavens and earth and suppressed by the Great Path. However, this Heaven Punishment Axe could actually help a cultivator break through the seal. Naturally, he was shocked. That's right. That's what the Heaven Punishment Weapon Spirit said. Fan Qingyu nodded quickly. This is the difference between an offensive spiritual treasure and an auxiliary spiritual treasure. Offensive spiritual treasures contained the power of Tao law of destruction. When attacking, it could naturally shatter everything. On the other hand, support-type numinous treasures were mainly support-type. The power of the Tao laws that they contained was also mainly support-type. Their offensive power was not strong, so naturally, they were not very useful in breaking the seal of the world. The Heaven Punisher Axe was an offensive-type numinous treasure. Furthermore, the Tao laws it contained were much more powerful. That was why it could break through the spatial seal and the suppression of the great Tao. This was also the reason why many Lemiders yearned for a spiritual treasure. This is because only by borrowing the power of numinous treasures can they break through the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao, and unleash an attack that surpasses the limits of the extreme realm. Ziyue explained after learning about it through the artifact spirit of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. Only then did the others come to a sudden realization, revealing expressions of understanding. He also gained a new understanding of the use of spiritual treasures. Fan Qingyu kept the spiritual treasure into her body. Apart from the sacrificial altar, there was nothing else in the cave. Thus, the group quickly returned to where they came from. Senior, since you have already obtained the treasure, can you let me go now? The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, Old Shu, asked as he looked at Ziyue cautiously. As you wish, you may leave now. Ziyue fell silent for a moment, then smiled and said, Senior Baiming, Sect Leader Baiming, Jiang Taixian and Master Jingxin were anxious. Even true supremacy Mo Fan opened his mouth, wanting to speak. A treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, whose strength had reached the initial stage of the primordial spirit realm, was extremely valuable. Its innate ability to search for treasures was extremely strong. Once subdued, it would bring great benefit. For example, if it were not for this treasure-hunting spiritual mouse, no one would be able to find the spiritual treasure that Fan Qingyu had obtained this time, even after hundreds or thousands of years. Thus, its value was obvious. Letting Fan Qingyu go was equivalent to letting go of a treasure mountain. Naturally, they felt that it was a pity. Even though this had nothing to do with them, they still felt sorry for Ziyue. It's all right, Ziyue said as he waved his hand. The treasure-hunting spiritual mouse was indeed very valuable. Not only was it not weak, but it was also very talented. It was an excellent helper when searching for treasures. If he could keep it by his side, the benefits would be great. It was equivalent to obtaining a huge treasure mountain. However, Fan Qingyu did not have any grudges with him. He had been obedient along the way, and had even told him the location of the treasure and the secret realm. Naturally, he would not make things difficult for him. Thank you, Senior, thank you, Old Shu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed and left quickly. As he ran, he kept looking back, afraid that Ziyue would go back on his words and capture him again. It was only when the distance between the two of them had exceeded 10,000 meters that it unleashed its maximum speed and quickly left. All right, the threat of the multi-tailed spiritual monkey has been dealt with. There are no more powerful beasts on the 5 Peaks Mountain. Next, let's start to measure the foundation and set up the formation. As he spoke, Bai Ziyue's divine consciousness spread out with a thought. A large area of the surrounding area was covered by his divine sense. Everything in this area, whether it was the demonic beasts, the exotic flowers and herbs, or the underground spiritual veins, were all under his control. Ziyue was also a formation master. He was quite familiar with the usage of formations. He decided to do it himself to speed up the process. Alright, let's get started. The 5 Peaks Mountain isn't small. It has been abandoned for years. Even though the quality of the spiritual veins isn't low, the foundation is already messed up. We need to sort it out. Master Calmheart and True Highness Mo Fan nodded. They then went somewhere else to measure the foundation. If I'm going to be involved in setting up the formation, my strength as a 3rd-grade formation master is too low. I need to improve it. Ziyue fell into deep thought while he was sorting out the formation. With a thought, his gaze landed on the formation Dao inheritance he had obtained by chance, the Great Way Formation Canon. In fact, he had spent some time cultivating and studying the Great Sylvan Array Codex, and he had already cultivated it to 87% of the uninitiated level. Now, he was fully immersed in it. He used the time he had to comprehend the Tao, the Book of De Tao, the Law Cultivation Room in the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, and the powerful characteristics of his golden soul to cultivate it. His progress was even more shocking. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, in just a few hundred breaths' time, he had managed to learn the basics of the Formation Tao inheritance. The Great Valley Formation Canon is comparable to the Formation Tao inheritance of a Supreme Realm expert. Since I've already cultivated it to the beginner level, let's see how much this Formation Tao inheritance can improve my Formation Tao skills. Ziyue was looking forward to it. His eyes flickered as he looked at the attributes panel. Spend 80 million soul energy to improve the Great Valley Formation Canon from the beginner level to the lesser level. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade it without much hesitation. Although the Formation Tao inheritance consumed a lot of soul energy, It was much more worth it compared to the time and energy required to cultivate at the same level. Naturally, he didn't mind. In the blink of an eye, countless information about the great ways array scriptures, all kinds of knowledge about array formations, and even information about array diagrams, understanding of array formations, organizing of foundation, observing the terrain, setting up of array formations, forging of array flags and array discs, all kinds of information about array formations flowed rapidly in his mind. In a short time, he absorbed and converted all of it into one. It seemed to have become an instinct, allowing his understanding of formation Tao to reach an extremely profound level. I'm a 4th grade formation master now, and an advanced 4th grade formation master at that. I've already surpassed Master Calm Heart's formation Tao skills. With my current formation Tao skills, it's much easier for me to sort out foundation Qi and observe the flow of spirit Qi in the spirit veins. I can save a lot of time, but it's still not enough. Ziyue was overjoyed. An advanced 4th grade formation master had a very high status in the world of immortal art. They were known as formation masters and held important positions in any sect. But he wasn't satisfied. I'll spend 480 million soul energy to upgrade the Great Valley Formation Cannon from initial mastery to full mastery. Upgrade. At the same time that Bai Ziyue chose to upgrade, countless pieces of information regarding array Tao poured into his mind. It was as if he had truly gone through thousands of years of arduous cultivation. He completely understood the entire Great Sylvan Array Tome and understood it like the back of his hand. Most importantly, his formation Tao skills were greatly improved as a result. Peak of advanced 5th grade. Now, my formation Tao skills have reached the peak of advanced 5th grade. He was only one step away from advancing further and reaching rank 6. A 4th grade formation master was known as a formation master, a 5th grade formation grandmaster, and a 6th grade formation master was known as the formation god, a one-of-a-kind existence in the world. At least in the star realm, there was no one who'd improved their formation Tao skills to the 6th grade. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how precious it was. Besides, even formation grandmasters could be worlds apart in terms of formation Tao skills. Take Mo Fan for example. Although he's also a formation Tao grandmaster, he's only a 5th grade formation master at the beginning. He's several times weaker than me, a 5th grade formation master at the peak of advanced 5th grade. It's not just the method of setting up a formation, measuring and sorting out foundation Qi, observing the flow of mountains and rivers, the application and understanding of formations, the method of refining formation flags and formation discs. He's much better in every aspect. Ziyue then went to measure the land and sort out the foundation Qi. His speed was much faster than before. With a sweep of his consciousness and a thought, the foundation Qi became stable and orderly after he sorted it out. Then, with a flash of his figure, he appeared in another direction and started his operation again. Half an hour later, he'd swept through the 5 Peaks mountain, which would have taken him at least 3 days to complete the measurement. Then, he began to set up the formation directly. Fortunately, Ziyue had expected this and had prepared enough materials. Although some of the formation flags and formation discs needed to be refined and were relatively short, he could still make some simple arrangements first. The 9 rotation stars spirit formation and the 9 extremes mountain protecting formation are both ancient formations with boundless power. Moreover, the 2 formations are very compatible and have the effect of complementing each other. Once completed, their power may not be weaker than a 6th grade formation array. However, the terrain of my 5 Peaks mountain spiritual land coincides with the 5 elements of heaven and earth. If I set up a set of 5 elements formation with the 5 Peaks as the foundation, it'll be more effective. However, if I want to add a 5 elements formation, it must be compatible with the original 9 rotation stars spirit formation and the 9 extremes mountain protecting formation. This isn't an easy task. Ziyue combined the 5 peaks mountain spiritual land and thought silently. Soon, his eyes lit up. Got it. The great 5 elements celestial spirit transformation formation. This formation could rely on the terrain of the 5 peaks mountain to amplify the advantage of the spiritual veins, transform the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth into 5 elements celestial spirit chi, and irrigate all living things, causing dense 5 elements celestial spirit chi to spread wherever the formation enveloped, and it could even merge with the other 2 great formations to complement each other and fuse into one. If the formation is completed, it can even be upgraded to a 6th grade formation array when the 3 formations are combined into one. By then, it'll definitely be able to make my mountain gate secure and last forever. Ziyue was a little excited. This was also the reason why he could think of such a suitable formation after he became an advanced 5th grade formation grandmaster and had a rich knowledge of formations. Otherwise, he would have to test the formations one by one. Not only would it be time-consuming, the effect of the formation wouldn't be good after it was completed. It was not easy to set up a 6th grade formation array. The only problem is that the materials needed to set up a 6th grade formation array that combines 3 formations into one is too much. The original 2 formations required more than 123,600 array bases. With the addition of the Great 5 Forms Celestial Spirit Transformation Formation, the number of array bases has increased by a large margin, directly soaring to 200,000. Ziyue couldn't help but frown slightly. The formation base was the real foundation of a formation array. However, refining the array foundation required time. Even if he had the strength of an advanced 5th grade formation grandmaster, and the speed of refining the formation base was incomparably fast, it was still not something that could be done in a short time. Fortunately, there's still Master Jingxin and Mo Fan. Their formation Dao strength is not weak, and they have a lot of formation base materials or formation bases that have been refined long ago. Not to mention, there will soon be a group of formation masters and weapon refiners in the Celestial Spirit sect. I believe that by then, the speed of refining the formation base will be faster. Ziyue thought silently and secretly let out a sigh of relief. As one of the top 10 immortal magic forces in the world, the Celestial Spirit sect was one of the top 2 super sects in the Firmament territory. Its foundation was very deep, and the number of formation bases in the Celestial Spirit sect must be very large. Therefore, he wasn't too worried. Chapter 8:13. On the second day, a group of cultivators arrived in a grandiose fashion. The leader was the elder of the Celestial Spirit sect, Taoist Clear Spring, whom Ziyue had met once before. In addition, there was a group of hundreds of formation masters and weapon forgers, led by Zhang Naixing, an advanced 4th grade formation master, and Zhou Yao, an advanced 4th grade weapon forger. It was also worth mentioning that the Celestial Spirit sect had sent dozens of powerful cultivators to guard the surroundings in order to protect the safety of this place. It was obvious that the Celestial Spirit sect attached great importance to Ziyue. Sect leader Baiming, how have you been? This time, as soon as our sect leader returned to the sect, the first thing he did was to assign people according to your previous suggestion. Not only did he send over almost all the idol formation masters and weapon forgers, but he also brought over all the materials that sect leader Baiming needed to set up the formation. This is enough for sect leader Baiming to set up the protective mountain formation successfully. Taoist Clear Spring looked at Ziyue and said with a laugh, "Thank you, sect leader Zhou and Taoist Clear Spring." Ziyue hurriedly bowed and said gratefully, "By the way, there are many multi-tailed spiritual monkeys in the 5 Peaks Mountain. This time, I came to help you drive these multi-tailed spiritual monkeys out." Why, Taoist Clear Spring looked at the 5 Peaks mountain not far away and could not help but be surprised. Jiang Taixian, who was following closely behind Ziyue, immediately showed a smug and proud expression when he heard this. He said, "Senior, you don't have to worry about this. That group of multi-tailed spiritual monkeys, whether they were 4-tailed, 5-tailed, or 6-tailed, have all been killed by our sect leader. Our sect master has only used one move from start to finish." Jiang Taishuan's pride was indescribable. Of course, he was smart enough not to reveal that he had encountered a treasure-seeking spiritual mouse in the early stage of the primordial soul realm, and that he had found a middle-grade spiritual treasure with the help of the treasure-seeking spiritual mouse. Otherwise, once the news was leaked, it would definitely cause a commotion with too many people talking. On top of that, Bai Ziyue had already warned Mo Fan about it. He believed Mo Fan's true highness would not leak the information to the public. He killed it in one move? Taoist Clear Spring was taken aback. In his surprise, he could not help but glance at Ziyue. Then, he quickly revealed an expression of relief and said with a bitter smile, "That's normal. With the strength of the head of the North Nether sect, let alone a 6-tailed monkey, even a 7-tailed monkey would find it difficult to withstand a single move." He was well aware of Ziyue's strength. He was an existence that could rival their sect leader. Naturally, he would not suspect anything. With the arrival of the formation masters and weapon forgers led by Taoist Clear Spring, the speed of setting up the formation in the entire 5 Peaks mountain immediately sped up. The group of people continued to refine the formation flags and foundations under Mo Fan's guidance. They quickly set up the formation under Ziyue's guidance and Master Jingxin's guidance. It was also at this time that the group of people discovered that Ziyue's array Dao strength was countless times more powerful than they imagined. Mo Fan, in particular, thought that his strength as a 5th-grade formation grandmaster was one of the best in the entire firmament territory. He should be the one in charge of setting up the formation this time. However, after interacting with Ziyue, especially the formation skills that Ziyue casually revealed, and the understanding of formation Dao that he casually mentioned, it was all extremely exquisite and beyond his imagination. It also immediately made him understand that Mo Fan's array Dao strength was even stronger and more terrifying than his. Therefore, he was completely convinced and no longer disobeyed Ziyue's instructions. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During this period, the entire 5 Peaks mountain had been busy. In order to speed up the progress of setting up the formation and to let the disciples grow and practice through this formation, Ziyue even summoned all the disciples of the Baiming sect in the North Nether Cave and assigned them to the formation masters and weapon forgers of the Celestial Spirit sect to learn and practice. Due to Bai Ziyue's array Dao prowess and the supreme prestige of a supreme realm expert, the disciples of the Heavenly Spirit sect did not dare to neglect him. Although they did not teach him everything they knew, they were not stingy with their guidance to the North Nether sect disciples. Thus, 3 months later, as Ziyue and the formation masters continued to set up the formation flags and formation discs were constantly falling down one after another. The entire formation was finally close to perfection. The position of the last formation flag should be here. Ziyue calculated the direction of the entire formation, which was compatible with the earth chi of the entire spirit vein. He conveniently pointed at the formation flag and placed it in the depths of a void. The world instantly became quiet. The earth chi and the depths of the earth chi seemed to have become unobstructed. In this way, the 9 Revolutions Star Spirit Transformation Formation, the 9 Extremes Mountain Protection Formation, and the Great 5 Forms Celestial Spirit Transformation Formation are finally set up by me. Now I am only one step away. As long as I place the formation I, the 3-in-1 formation can be activated immediately. At that time, I will be able to gather spirit chi, defend, and destroy the enemy. I believe that even if a mighty immortal path expert of the spirit severing stage comes, he will have to put in a lot of effort to break the formation. If there is someone operating and guarding the formation, there is even a possibility of killing such an existence. Ziyue's figure floated in midair, looking at the formation that he had set up in various parts of the Five Peaks Mountain Spirit Land with satisfaction. With his array Dao strength, it was relatively easy to set up a 5th-grade formation. However, this 3-in-1 formation was comparable to a 6th-grade formation. Even he had spent a lot of time and energy, but it had also benefited him greatly. Not only had he completely stabilized his strength as an advanced 5th-grade formation master, but he had also taken a step further, peeking into the mysteries of a 6th-grade formation master. If he continued like this, even if he didn't have a higher level of Array Dao inheritance, he was confident that he could advance his Array Dao strength and become a grade 6 Array Master after spending some time. Of course, in addition to Ziyue, the other formation masters had also made great progress. Mo Fan's true Venerate strength was originally a 5th-grade formation master. After setting up the formation this time, coupled with Ziyue's constant guidance, he was confident that he could improve further and become an intermediate 5th-grade formation master in a few years. Although it was only a small promotion, it had to be known that for formation masters, especially those who had reached the 5th grade, every promotion was extremely difficult. The possibility of him improving further was already a monstrous opportunity, which made him extremely excited. In addition to him, Master Jingxin's improvement was even greater. She had directly advanced from an advanced 4th-grade formation master to a beginner 5th-grade formation master, leaping from a formation master to a formation grandmaster. Therefore, when Ziyue showed a hint of willingness, he followed the good advice and directly joined the Baiming sect founded by Ziyue, becoming the first formation grandmaster of the Baiming sect. In addition, many formation masters of the Celestial Spirits sect had also been promoted, and most of their formation Dao strength had increased. This time, setting up the formation was a huge opportunity for all the formation masters, and almost everyone had grown as a result. Even in the Baiming sect founded by Ziyue, there was a person who showed extraordinary talent in formation Dao. In a short period of time, he went from a person who knew nothing about formation Dao to a beginner 2nd-grade formation master. His potential was amazing. Now, he had been accepted as a disciple by Master Jingxin and was specially taught by her. Let's begin the last step. Then, Ziyue turned his hand and immediately took out a black bead. This black bead was the Grotto Heaven treasure that Ziyue had obtained in the early days, the Baiming Grotto Heaven. The Baiming Grotto Heaven was not very useful to the current Ziyue, but it was very suitable to be used as the formation eye. After all, its grade had been refined by him and filled with countless spiritual meridians, and it had reached a very high level, enough to be used as the formation eye to suppress the entire formation. Moreover, the Baiming Grotto Heaven has the corpse of a true dragon guarding it. With the protection of the true dragon chi, it might be able to bring out unexpected changes in the entire formation. Ziyue thought to himself, and then pressed his hand, placing the Baiming Grotto Heaven in the center of the formation eye. Buzz. When the formation was completed, the color of heaven and earth changed. The entire Five Peaks spiritual land suddenly moved without any wind. Endless spiritual chi of heaven and earth moved rapidly, and the heavens and earth suddenly emitted endless rays of light. Formation flags and formation plates were connected, covering an area of a few hundred miles. At this moment, from the outside, the Five Peaks spiritual land seemed to have disappeared, and no one could see what was going on inside. Then, Ziyue suddenly raised his head and felt a trace of an inexplicable aura coming down from the 9 heavens, sprinkling directly on the formation. It was the power of the stars from the 9 heavens, outside of the star realm, being gathered and drawn down. The 3 formations become one formation rotated, and the endless power of the stars was quickly converted into endless vitality, sprinkling all over the Five Peaks spiritual land. In the blink of an eye, Ziyue felt that the already rich spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Five Peaks spiritual land became even richer. Originally, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings, if calculated in terms of spirit stones, should add up to about 7 million upper spirit stones. However, as the power of the stars fell and the endless spiritual energy was converted, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings soared to 8 million upper spirit stones, 9 million upper spirit stones, and then 10 million upper spirit stones. Almost at every moment, Ziyue could feel that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings was becoming richer and richer. The flowers, plants, trees, and all kinds of living things in the Five Peaks spiritual land grew more vigorous and full of vitality as the spiritual qi increased. Because of this, strange phenomena appeared in the heavens and earth. There was a faint, auspicious light sprinkling down, and the spiritual qi gathered into dark clouds and formed raindrops that dripped down. The raindrops were the spiritual water of heaven and earth formed by the extremely rich spiritual qi. There were also spiritual qi flowers and birds flying in the void, and spiritual spring water gushed out from the ground and flowed down, nourishing all living things. Numerous little beasts ran happily in the forest, inhaling and exhaling spirit energy, drinking spirit spring water, and enjoying the illumination of these strands of auspicious light that were tiny yet solid. Unknowingly, they'd obtained growth and evolution, becoming even more robust and powerful. Countless cultivators, regardless of whether they were disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect or the North Nether sect, were immersed in the sudden formation of the Great Formation and the changes of creation and rebirth. They inexplicably gained enlightenment and immersed themselves in cultivation at the first moment. This was a creation, a special opportunity that could allow all living things in the world to sublimate to the extreme and make a breakthrough. Because of this, the cultivators' realms were loosened and their cultivations broke through. The cultivators' faces showed signs of enlightenment, and there were even cultivators who, under the invasion of the spiritual qi and the auspicious light, had their physiques greatly improved and special abilities were awakened. Boom, boom, boom. The sounds of cultivators breaking through rang out one after another. It made the spiritual qi in the surroundings more lively in the midst of the chaos. It's time. After 3 months of accumulation and settling, my foundation has become incomparably strong. It's time for me to break through. Fan Qingyu's bright eyes revealed a trace of brilliance. Then, under the illumination of the endless spiritual qi, she officially began to break through. I didn't expect that when this great formation was completed, there would be such a big commotion. It even allowed so many disciples to benefit. This is really beyond my expectations. Most importantly, when the protective mountain formation is completed, it turns out to be a real 6th grade great formation. With this, I can officially control the entire Five Peaks Mountain's spirit vein and use the abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the spirit vein to deduce a heaven-breaking Tao technique. Ziyue sat cross-legged in the void and sensed the situation of the cultivators above the spirit vein. He could not help but smile. Then, he took advantage of the opportunity to control the great formation and maintain the dense and abundant spiritual qi around the cultivators. As the person who set up the 6th grade great formation, his control of the entire great formation had reached an extremely high level. It was naturally very easy for him to control the division of spiritual qi in the great formation. Of course, he also noticed that Fan Qingyu was at the critical moment of her breakthrough. Almost 1/3 of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and almost half of the auspicious qi surged around her to help her break through. A cultivator's breakthrough was a very spontaneous process. It was difficult for outsiders to provide much help. Therefore, Ziyue could not do much. However, The influx of spiritual qi and auspicious qi would definitely make Fan Qingyu's breakthrough smoother. The benefits she would obtain after breaking through would also be greater. Then, he poured the remaining spiritual qi of heaven and earth into his Kunwu golden pagoda and the book of the great Tao that he had taken out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the infusion of endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the Dharma cultivation room in the Kunwu golden pagoda shook rapidly. Countless Dharma laws of heaven and earth appeared, and the book of the great Tao was also stimulated by the spiritual qi and emitted a fluorescent light. Ziyue did not hesitate. When he activated the enlightenment time, he quickly immersed his mind into it. As expected, the heaven-breaking Tao technique that I created has begun to be deduced rapidly again. Although it's still a little slow, the progress is gratifying. Ziyue's face was immediately filled with joy. Chapter 8:14. 10%, 11%, 12%. The progress of Ziyue's self-created heaven-breaking Tao technique was slowly improving. In the process of creating the technique, Ziyue was also improving at every moment. The endless mysteries of the Tao laws and the use of various true techniques, especially after his array formation Tao had reached the advanced 5th grade, allowed him to have a deeper understanding of the workings of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, he also had a better idea of how to create the technique. Unknowingly, he was integrating the mysteries of the Tao laws in the way of setting up a formation. Each of the mysteries of the Tao laws and the runes of the great Tao were like the foundation of a formation. They were tightly controlled by him and connected one by one. As they were pushed forward, they gave rise to endless changes and endless power. On the other side, with the support of the spiritual power controlled by Ziyue, more than half of the auspicious qi surged into the formation. This was especially true for the auspicious qi. It was gathered from the void after the formation of the formation. It was not a gift from the world, but a natural creation that emerged after the formation was transformed. It could be said to be endless and would be born at almost every moment. If it was scattered, it would naturally be very thin. Although it could benefit the living beings of the 5 Peaks Mountain, it would not have any special effects. However, it was all gathered and gathered around Fan Qingyu. As she absorbed it, it immediately gave her endless benefit. When she broke through to the Golden Core realm, she had endless opportunities and improvements. 3rd grade Golden Core, 2nd grade Golden Core, 1st grade Golden Core. She used all her strength to compress and refine the Golden Core, increasing the quality of the condensed Golden Core. Endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth was absorbed by her. With the support of the great completion Tao body and the auspicious qi, it was as if she had the help of the gods. Soon, her Golden Core was compressed to the extreme. Then, with a jerk of her body, a little purple light appeared on her Golden Core. Purple Pole Golden Core. Is this the sign that the Purple Pole Golden Core has been formed? Fan Qingyu's eyes were filled with obvious joy and excitement. However, she did not dare to relax and once again immersed herself in the process. However, although the little purple in the Golden Core was pleasing to her, it was not enough to satisfy her. This was because she felt that she still had strength left. The endless auspicious aura also made her secretly grateful, and at the same time, she also had greater ambitions. Thus, she forced herself to take a deep breath and once again madly circulated her cultivation technique to compress her Golden Core. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, instantly, the purple spot on her Golden Core seemed to have spread out. It grew bigger and bigger, gradually filling up the other spots. Have you reached your limit? In the end, I can only increase the coverage of the amethyst golden pellet to about 80%, and I can't continue beyond that. Fan Qingyu's expression was slightly ugly, and she was unwilling to accept this result. From Ziyue's explanation, she already knew that the extreme violet Golden Core that her opponent had condensed was a pure, perfect extreme violet Golden Core. Violet covered the entire golden core, and the size of the golden core was incomparably large. It was so majestic that it looked like a house. What about her? Not only was the size of her golden core much smaller than Zeus's, but the extreme violet golden core that she had condensed only took up 80% of the entire golden core. Although this 80% was actually more than countless cultivators since ancient times, and even more than Situzheng, it still made her feel somewhat regretful. One should know that her body constitution was special. She was born with a Taoist body, and now that she had reached the phenomenal success level, she was far superior to Zeus. No. I can't be content with the current situation. Although Brother Bai is strong, I, Fan Qingyu, can't just rely on him. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't control my own fate like before. Fan Qingyu's slightly downcast eyes suddenly lit up, and then a trace of determination appeared in them. At this moment, she actually quickly scattered the golden core that was about to be condensed, causing the originally solid and pure extreme violet golden core to quickly transform into a special black color. The 9 transformation golden core technique, after breaking, then establishing. After the golden core is shattered, it will be reformed according to the characteristics of the technique. After the 9 transformation, the condensed golden core will definitely be improved to a higher level. The magical effects of the 9 transformation golden core technique flashed through Fan Qingyu's mind. This technique was actually not very exquisite, and it was not a secret in the celestial spirit sect. Almost half of the peak deity realm cultivators would exchange for this technique before they formed their golden core, in case of an emergency. This technique was actually mostly chosen by the cultivators of the celestial spirit sect. They were not satisfied with the golden core that they had condensed, so they had no choice but to choose this technique. For example, if a cultivator had a certain chance of condensing a 3rd-grade golden core, but it was a 4th-grade golden core, he would choose to shatter his golden core and recondense it. At that time, there was a certain chance that he would go one step further and condense a 3rd-grade golden core. But in fact, the more this technique was, the higher the risk. Once there was an accident, it was very likely that the cultivator's cultivation would be destroyed, and it would be difficult for him to condense his golden core again. Moreover, even if everything went smoothly, the cultivator might not be satisfied with the condensed golden core. But at this moment, Fan Qingyu did not hesitate to shatter her golden core and recondense it again. She knew very well that even if she used the 9 transformation golden core technique, it would be extremely difficult to transform her golden core into a perfect amethyst golden core. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 9 transformation golden core technique ran wildly, and the shattered golden core quickly gathered and began to compress again. 3rd-grade golden core, 2nd-grade golden core, 1st-grade golden core. Every time the 9 transformation golden core technique ran, the quality of Fan Qingyu's golden core would increase. At the 5th transformation, there was already a purple light above the golden core. Then the 6th transformation, the 7th transformation, the 8th transformation. The purple area gradually deepened. 50%, 60%, 70%, soon, it reached 80%. 80%? Fan Qingyu was excited and continued. After the 9th transformation, the purple area increased sharply and reached 90%. 90% is still not enough. Fan Qingyu hesitated for a moment, then her expression turned serious, and she shattered her golden core again. Her perfected Tao body, the endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the support of countless auspicious qi, made her very confident, which was why she was so bold and decisive. 1st transformation, 2nd transformation, 3rd transformation, 3rd-grade golden core, 2nd-grade golden core, 1st-grade golden core. Finally, when she used the 9 transformation golden core technique to the 9th transformation, the golden core in her body shook violently and finally condensed completely, turning into a pure purple core the size of a water tank. Amethyst golden core. The perfect amethyst golden core. Fan Qingyu's face was full of joy. She had finally succeeded in forming the perfect amethyst orris core after 2 attempts of breaking the orris core and condensing it. After the perfect amethyst golden core was formed, Fan Qingyu's aura also changed greatly, becoming more ethereal and beautiful, like a goddess from the 9 heavens who had descended to the mortal world. Every move of hers revealed strange phenomena and the great Tao. With a thought, she withdrew the strange phenomena and hurriedly looked in the direction of Ziyue, just in time to see his smiling face. "How is it?" Ziyue saw her relaxed expression and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but smile and ask. "Not bad, I successfully formed the golden core." Then, she deliberately paused and said, "The golden core is formed, the amethyst golden core. And it's a perfect amethyst golden core." Ziyue was stunned when he heard this, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. He hurriedly said excitedly, "That's great, I didn't expect you to succeed." He already knew that although Fan Qingyu was usually quiet, she was very ambitious. She would not be satisfied with a mere first-grade golden core, and with her physique and accumulation, he was not surprised that she could form the amethyst golden core. However, the perfect amethyst golden pellet had truly shocked him. He also knew that she was far more stubborn and strong than he had imagined. The 6th-grade protective mountain array was successfully set up, and under the gathering of endless spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the 5 Peaks mountain changed almost every day. All kinds of exotic flowers and rare herbs were born. Even the ordinary spiritual trees became more tenacious and upright, and all kinds of creatures evolved. At this time, the disciples of the North Nether sect were all summoned by Ziyue, and began to build immortal residences and halls on a large scale, corresponding to the layout of the entire sect. With the means of cultivators, and with the countless immortal materials that Ziyue had plundered from the many sea demon palaces and dragon palaces, the halls were quickly uprooted from the ground. The magnificent scene attracted the attention of the disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect. In just a short time, the entire 5 Peaks mountain had changed. Not only were there celestial stone steps, but there were also hundreds of palaces and innumerable houses. Large spiritual fields were laid out in various parts of the 5 Peaks mountain. With the guidance of the disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect, they also opened up a beast garden and a large spiritual orchard. It was also worth mentioning that several large spiritual mines were found in the 5 Peaks mountain. Once they were mined, even without Ziyue's help, it would be enough for the sect to develop smoothly and become rich. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. After the formation was completed, the cultivators of the Celestial Spirit sect stayed for another 2 months, and then left one after another. Fan Qingyu also left with them. After breaking through to the Golden Core realm, she also needed to exchange for the subsequent cultivation methods from the Celestial Spirit sect. Ziyue originally wanted to help her with the deduction, but was rejected, because in addition to the cultivation methods, Fan Qingyu also needed to bring Zhao Ling who was still in seclusion. Thinking of Zhao Ling whom he had not seen for a long time, Ziyue was also quite emotional, and did not insist. With Taoist Clear Spring and Emofan, the 2 top experts of the Celestial Spirit sect, escorting her along the way, he did not have to worry about Fan Qingyu's safety. Not to mention, Fan Qingyu still had a protective spiritual treasure on her. Holding the heaven-punishing axe, a middle-grade spiritual treasure, and with the strength of a perfect purple pole golden core, she could unleash strength comparable to a half-step primordial soul realm cultivator. Although she might not be able to pose a threat to a primordial soul realm cultivator, if a primordial soul realm cultivator really attacked, the weapon spirit of the heaven-punishing axe would also fight back with all its strength, unleashing a blow that could break the heavens. In the past 2 months, with the help of the abundant spiritual energy in the 5 Peaks mountain, I have continuously deduced the creation of the cultivation method. My heaven-breaking Tao art has finally been deduced to the extreme, and is only one step away from being completely formed and multiplying. In the past 2 months, Ziyue only showed up occasionally, and most of his attention was on the creation of the cultivation method. And after 2 months of deductions, although the progress of his creation was slow, he had already reached the extreme half a month ago, and was only one step away from being able to sublimate to the extreme and completely form the cultivation method. However, it was this final step that was like a heavenly strike that blocked his path, preventing him from succeeding in the end. As expected, this heaven-breaking Tao art is not so easy to create. Now that my various deductions have reached the extreme, but it still hasn't been formed. Clearly, I'm still lacking something? Ziyue pondered for a moment, pondering the reason behind it. He believed that his accumulation and foundation were definitely not bad, or at least not weaker than any of the supreme-level cultivators. As for the time needed to create the cultivation method, because of the time needed to comprehend the Tao, the Book of the Great Tao, the Law Cultivation Room, and even the support of the auspicious aura, it was actually enough to offset the hundreds and thousands of years spent by countless supreme-level cultivators. Then, what I'm lacking is only the cultivation level. Could it be because my cultivation level has not reached the peak of the primordial soul realm? Ziyue's expression darkened slightly. His current cultivation level was actually not low, and had already reached the mid-stage primordial soul realm. In terms of cultivation level, it was enough for him to be an elder in any super sect, be in charge of a territory, and change the fate of billions of people with a single word. However, this was obviously not enough for him to create the attack that could break the suppression of heaven and earth, and the seal of the great Tao. No, that's not right. Cultivation level is not the problem. Heaven-breaking Tao art is ultimately still a Tao art and a supreme Tao art. In terms of cultivation level, it's impossible for me to cultivate the heart sword technique, instant 1,000-mile distance, true dragon dark armor technique, and 9 thunder god destroying seal to perfection. Therefore, what I'm lacking is not the primordial soul realm, but... Ziyue quickly shook his head, and a thoughtful look suddenly appeared on his face. Cultivation level was very important to cultivators of the immortal Tao. It was the foundation of cultivation, the source of the great Tao. However, cultivation level did not represent one's strength. This was especially so for Ziyue, who fought above his level and went against the odds to defeat immortals. This was something that he relied on. Apart from his foundation in cultivation level, the most important thing was actually those Tao art. In summary, he naturally understood that what he lacked was not just cultivation level. It was a kind of spirit, essence, qi, and spirit. The heaven-breaking Tao art that I've created now is an offensive secret art, but no matter what kind of secret art it is, it contains a great murderous intent. This murderous intent is actually the essence, qi, and spirit. If a cultivator has no murderous intent, and no desire to kill, how can he really create the heaven-breaking Tao art that he needs? A look of understanding appeared on Ziyue's face. In recent years, although he had been decisive in killing, he really lacked the murderous intent that he had in the early days. Therefore, he had to regain his murderous intent. Chapter 8:15. Regaining his murderous heart did not mean that he had to let go of his evil thoughts and kill without restraint. That would be equivalent to becoming a demon, which was not an option for him. Regaining his murderous heart was also a process of subduing it. It required him to kill decisively and kill those he thought deserved to be killed. It was also a process of refining his heart in the mortal world, a process of sublimation in battle. Therefore, I need a great battle, a battle that I can fight freely and without any scruples. I need to release all of my strength. Ziyue understood what he lacked. Although he had killed to his heart's content during the heavenly tribulation, and many experts had died at his hands. Most of them had borrowed the power of the heavenly tribulation. On the other hand, he had not displayed much of his own strength. Naturally, it was difficult for him to be emotionally affected. If he had not completely released his murderous heart, how could he subdue it? However, I have been peaceful and invincible. Where is the murderous heart? Ziue frowned. He was too powerful. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to provoke him. Even the Heavenly Spirit sect, which had wanted to kill him, bowed their heads in time and wanted to befriend him, not to mention the other forces. However, the 9-star Tao Palace, which was extraordinarily powerful and ranked among the top 3 forces in the star realm, had a deeper grudge with him. Until now, there had been no conclusion. Buzz. At this moment, Ziue felt the message talisman in his storage bag vibrate slightly. His eyes moved and he quickly took it out. It was Fu Yunfan. Fu Yunfan was an expert who had been recruited by him before Master Calm Heart and Jiang Taixian in the Dragon Palace. He was also one of the rare late primordial spirit realm cultivators. Previously, Ziue had planned to ask him to look for a suitable spiritual land for the North Nether sect. Now that he had already chosen this spiritual land, and even the mountain guarding formation had been completed, everything was on the right track. Naturally, there was no need for him to search for it. Before this, he had also left a message for the other party to return to 5 Peaks Mountains North Nether sect at any time. However, almost half a year had passed and there had been no response. Fu Yunfan had not come to the 5 Peaks Mountain either. Now there was finally news. Fu Yunfan greets the sect leader. Fu Yunfan's figure appeared in the messaging shadow. His face was filled with obvious respect. He didn't expect that Ziue would cause such a huge commotion while he was gone. He had gone through the tribulation alone, killed countless powerhouses, and even exiled a Lemeter, the sect master of the myriad phenomenon sect, into spatial turbulence. To this day, he had not been able to return to the star boundary, nor had he dared to. Most importantly, he was recognized as a publicly recognized Lemeter and was one of the top 10 Lemeters in the world. His ranking was even higher than that of the Wanxiang sect's leader, Situ Wu. When he first heard of these deeds, even he was a little dumbfounded. Even though he had long known that the other party's strength was astounding and could resist the extraterrestrial demon head-on, he did not expect the other party to have such a shocking performance. "What is it?" Ziue asked indifferently. "Sect Master, during this period of time, due to an accident, I was accidentally involved in an ancient battlefield. In the ancient battlefield, the primordial qi is chaotic and the Tao is murky. It is impossible to send messages. Therefore, I have not replied to the sect leader's letter for a few months. Now that I have just walked out of the ancient battlefield, I can't wait to contact the sect leader." When Fu Yunfan saw this, he quickly replied, "Ancient battlefield?" Ziue was taken aback and asked in surprise. "That's right. This ancient battlefield was left behind after the great battle between the 7 perfected immortals 10,000 years ago. The battlefield is extremely wide and extremely dangerous. Even a peak primordial soul realm powerhouse would be in danger of dying if he stepped into it. But at the same time, there are many treasures inside. Even an inconspicuous weed that could survive in such an environment would be considered a heavenly treasure outside. Not to mention, there are countless Dharma treasures left behind from the ancient war. There are golden core treasures, primordial soul treasures, and even numinous treasures left behind after the fall of the perfected immortals. Therefore, almost every year, there would be cultivators entering the battlefield for these treasures. Fu Yunfan said. Ziue nodded. He naturally knew that the ancient battlefield was left behind after the great battle between the perfected immortals 10,000 years ago. In addition to the treasures left behind by the perfected immortals, many of the inheritances and treasures of the 2 super-immortal sects of the ancient barren region were also in the ancient battlefield. Over the past 10,000 years, The number of numinous treasures that had been discovered in the ancient battlefield was no less than the number of five-finger technique. Therefore, it attracted countless top experts to enter the battlefield to explore. Even old monster Ding Chen, whom he had killed some time ago, had stayed in the ancient battlefield for close to 100 years. That was why the outside world guessed that he had died. He did not expect that Fu Yunfan had not seen him for a period of time because he had entered the ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield is full of danger. This time, I entered it because of an accident. Initially, I wanted to use the teleportation formation in the Dragon Palace to leave. But on the way, I found that the other end of the teleportation formation had been damaged and the space had shifted. When I came back to my senses, I found that I had been teleported to the ancient battlefield. Fu Yunfan explained. The teleportation formation in the Dragon Palace is not safe. Ziyue nodded and said. When he had been teleported, he had also met with an accident. If he had not been strong enough to forcefully open the space barrier and enter the astral boundary, he would not have known where he would have been teleported to. Perhaps, like Fu Yunfan, they would directly enter the ancient battlefield. If they were unlucky, they might enter a dangerous place, or even directly enter the stomach of a terrifying giant beast, dying before they could even achieve their goal. Yes, I was teleported to the ancient battlefield back then, and I was near the center of the battlefield. I experienced countless dangers along the way. There were no less than 10 life and death situations. Took me another half a year to barely walk out of the battlefield. However, it was this experience that allowed me to find a secret treasure. That secret treasure was a jade scepter. The jade scepter shone with a 7-colored radiance. It was definitely a numinous treasure and its grade was not low. However, the entire numinous treasure was in a deadly formation and was guarded by 7 puppets. Of these 7 puppets, even the weakest one was no weaker than me. With my current strength, there was nothing I could do. Therefore, I would like to ask the sect leader to help me fight for the numinous treasure. Fu Yunfan said in a serious tone. A numinous treasure jade scepter? Ziyue frowned. He was naturally interested in numinous treasures. However, the most important thing for him now was to create a heaven-breaking Dao technique. If it was not necessary, he did not want to delay it. However, when he thought of the ancient battlefield, he felt that it was a very suitable place for him to regain his killing desire and then subdue it. This was because there were countless experts in the ancient battlefield. Not only were there cultivators from the firmament territory, but there were also experts from the sky demon domain and the true law domain. There were also demonic beasts, exotic beasts, and experts from the barbarian tribe. There was no right or wrong in killing. Moreover, the ancient battlefield was within the ancient barbarian domain. It also hid the secret of the battle between the 7 genuine immortals 10,000 years ago. If it could cause the 7 genuine immortals to fight, one could imagine how big the secret was. If it was a treasure, it would be extremely precious and would be beyond anything else. It would be highly sought after by countless people. Although Ziyue was not determined to get it, he could not help but be interested. Of course, the most important thing was that he had been away from the ancient barbarian domain for many years. He missed the scenery of the ancient barbarian domain. If possible, he would like to return to the ancient barbarian domain and take a look. Therefore, Ziyue ultimately decided to attend the meeting. As for the dangers of the ancient battlefield, he was not worried. An ultimate realm cultivator represented the peak of the astral boundary. Although he might not be invincible in the ancient battlefield, it was enough to increase his ability to protect his life. At least within the star level, there were very few people who could hurt him. Moreover, he also had a numinous treasure to protect him. Ever since his immortal techniques had broken through to the primordial soul realm, the power that he could unleash when he used the Kunwu Golden Pagoda had increased by a lot. Especially its defensive power. he estimated that even a spirit-severing realm expert would have to put in a lot of effort to break it. As for its offensive power, the Kunwu Golden Pagoda was not an offensive numinous treasure. Even if it could unleash a terrifying power through the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, it was only at the level of the Supreme Realm. It was just that the range of impact was wider. This was also the reason why he was so eager to create a heaven-breaking Dao technique. Since he had decided, Ziyue would not hesitate. He handed over the many matters of the North Nether sect to Jiang Taixian and the rest to handle. He also distributed the treasures that he had obtained earlier. He believed that with the protection of the sixth grade array, even a Supreme Realm expert would not be able to escape unscathed. Only then did he leave with peace of mind. Driving the boat of large scale to fly through the void, Ziyue sat down cross-legged and began to carefully read some information about the ancient battlefield. With his current strength and status, whether it was with the help of the Celestial Spirit sect or Mount Qingxian, he could obtain the information he needed. Especially Mount Qingxian. He thought that because he had rejected the invitation of the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master, the other party would hold a grudge against him and restrict him from using the Mount Qingxian Mountain token. He did not expect that not only was he not restricted, but the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master even personally appeared to apologize to him and opened up many treasures for him to exchange. One of them was called the Shi Ling Essence. It could increase the strength of a cultivator's soul and repair damage to the soul. He could not help but be tempted and could not help but exchange for some more. Of course, he was not surprised by the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master's goodwill. Now that he had mastered such powerful means and the strength of a Supreme Realm expert, no matter how unwilling the Mount Qingxian Mountain Master was, he would not dare to offend him. Otherwise, if Ziyue was angered, the revenge of a Supreme Realm expert would be too much for the Mount Qingxian Mountain to bear, even if it was the second largest assassin organization in the astral world. The ancient battlefield was gradually formed 10,000 years ago after the earth-shattering battle between the 7 perfected Immortal Realm experts. That battle caused the astral world to tremble and the ancient barren region to sink and split apart. It was almost destroyed. Moreover, there were perfected Immortal Realm experts who died there. The perfected Immortal Realm experts were highly skilled and their bodies contained endless power of Tao. After the perfected Immortal Realm experts died, the great Tao was revealed and heaven and earth were compassionate. Endless immortal Qi was released. Because of that, the creation was born and all kinds of rare treasures were born. In addition, the perfected Immortal Realm experts would definitely have numinous treasures on them. Naturally, countless cultivators would fight to go there. Over the past 10,000 years, countless cultivators had obtained opportunities, secret treasures, inheritances, or spiritual fruits of the heavens and earth. In a short period of time, their strength had increased tremendously. But at the same time, countless cultivators were buried in foreign lands, forever lost in the ancient battlefield. Ziyue pondered silently. He was not surprised by this. The more treasures there were, the higher the level of danger. Not to mention, other than the harsh environment, there were actually more conflicts and killings between cultivators. Naturally, they had to be more careful. It could be said that many cultivators in the ancient barren battlefield were killed by the great killing array that was left behind 10,000 years ago. However, more of them died in the hands of their companions and other human cultivators. According to the information, the entire ancient barren battlefield is divided into 3 levels of danger. They are the outer region, the central region, and the land of the fallen immortals. Among them, golden core cultivators can enter the outer region. There is a certain chance of obtaining treasures that can increase one's strength and potential. For many golden core cultivators who know that their potential is hopeless and can't improve their strength for a long time, it is extremely tempting. The central region is relatively more dangerous. Only primordial soul cultivators dare to step into it. Even so, the risk factor is extremely high. From time to time, there are news of primordial soul cultivators dying there. Of course, the more dangerous it is, the greater the benefits one can obtain. Not only are there many heavenly treasures with astonishing value, but there are also many primordial soul treasures that are scattered everywhere for some reason. After a period of time, there are even numinous treasures that appear, causing countless cultivators to go crazy and fight for them. As for the land of the fallen immortals, as the name suggests, it is the place where true immortals are suspected to have fallen. Not only are there core array components that can kill people silently, but there is also immortal evil chi that invades the surroundings and contaminates everything, causing people to tremble in fear. It is said that in the early days, there was a supreme realm cultivator who was contaminated by this immortal evil chi. He spent 100 years but still couldn't get rid of it completely. Instead, it affected his cultivation path and made it impossible for him to reach the separating divinity stage. Of course, on the other hand, it is said that there are numinous treasures in the land of the fallen immortals. Even the legendary immortal treasure that the 7 true immortals fought for is also in the land of the fallen immortals. No one has really taken it. Ziua looked thoughtful as he flipped through the records and information about the ancient barren battlefield. The outer region, the central region, and the land of the fallen immortals. To him, the only place that was truly dangerous was the land of the fallen immortals. This was because there were terrifying killing arrays and immortal evil chi that could threaten supreme realm cultivators. As for the legendary immortal treasure, he actually didn't believe that it would be in the land of the fallen immortals. The reason for that was because he knew that in the battle between the 7 true immortals, there would be people who would die and people who would be injured. There would definitely be people who would emerge victorious. The victorious party would definitely not allow the immortal treasure to be left outside. It would definitely have been taken away. Unless. Chapter 8:16. Unless, in that great battle, all 7 of them were defeated and injured, causing them to be unable to take away the immortal treasure. However, was that possible? Ziua shook his head and did not believe it. In particular, he knew that outside the 100,000 mountains of the ancient barren region, there was a large formation barrier that covered the heavens and the earth. The formation barrier's aura was not obvious, and the area it covered was extremely large. However, it was able to block countless monsters above the god realm in the 100,000 mountains. One could imagine how powerful it was. Even now, Ziua's formation Dao had reached the advanced 5th grade, and he vaguely saw a trace of the mystery of the 6th grade formation master. However, he was not confident that he could set up such a large formation. That formation was obviously set up by an immortal path expert above the supreme realm, at the spirit severing stage. Moreover, that expert's formation Dao was extremely powerful, at least above the 6th grade. In the entire star boundary, I have never heard of anyone whose formation Dao had reached the 6th grade. Therefore, that large formation was most likely set up by one of the 7 immortal realm experts, and it was set up after that great battle. Ziua judged with a complicated look in his eyes. Even if that large formation had indeed been of great help to the remaining humans in the ancient barren region, at least it had prevented the people of the ancient barren region from being attacked and harmed by the monsters in the 100,000 mountains or other places. However, it was also a fact that the battle between the 7 immortals had sunk the ancient barren region. It should be known that when the ancient barren region was at its peak, it was not weaker than the firmament territory. It was said that there were even immortal path experts at the spirit severing stage guarding it. But now, the strongest immortal path sects were only at the god realm. The spiritual chi was thin, and there were few cultivators. It was called the Immortal Path Desert. As a cultivator from the ancient barren region, if possible, I have to do something for it. Ziyue thought of what the Chaoyang Dao sect master had said to him before he left. That kind of eagerness and hope that the ancient barren region could break the seal and not be called a prison like it was now, and that they could return to the peak. Thinking about it now moved him. The cultivators of the ancient barren region had been in despair for too long. The great Tao had no end in sight and could not be pursued. To cultivators who longed to transcend and cultivate in defiance of the heavens, such a thing was simply too powerless and too depressing. It was also because of this that the heavenly spirit sect's once every 30 years recruitment of geniuses was akin to cutting off the future potential of the ancient desolate region. On the contrary, it was a huge opportunity, causing countless cultivators to look forward to it. If we want the ancient desolate region to return to the real world, we must first get rid of the seal on the cage. The astral wind canyon, the boundless sea realm, and the 100,000 great mountain range had to be opened. In addition, the most important thing is to increase the density of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here. Ziyue's eyes flickered and he could not help but take out his communication token. The power of his primordial spirit moved slightly and he started to send a message. Soon, the communication token was connected, and the figure of the celestial spirit sect leader, Zhou Gutong, appeared in the void. This was the 10,000 miles communication token that the two of them had left with each other the last time they met. It allowed them to contact each other anytime, anywhere. Dark North Sect Master? May I know why fellow Taoist Dark North is looking for me? Zhou Gutong raised his eyebrows in surprise and asked. Sect Leader Zhou. There is something I would like to ask Sect Leader Zhou. Ziyue did not hesitate and asked directly. Then, without waiting for Zhou Gutong to ask, he said directly, Sect Leader Zhou should know that I was born in the ancient desolate region. Although I know that my abilities are limited, I still want to do something for the ancient desolate region. Therefore, I would like to know how to restore the vitality of the ancient desolate region, when the spiritual chi recovers to its peak. Also, how can we open the cage of the ancient desolate region so that the cultivators can freely enter and exit the firmament territory, or even a wider area? He knew that the Celestial Spirit sect was the only sect that allowed cultivators to enter and exit the ancient desolate region in the past 10,000 years. Therefore, he knew the ancient desolate region very well. Therefore, if there was anyone who could answer his question, it would be the many experts of the Celestial Spirit sect. Dark North Sect Master, you are indeed extraordinary. Your breadth of mind is even more admirable. When Zhou Gutong heard this, he first sighed in admiration. Then, his face turned serious and he said, however, it is not so easy to restore the vitality of the ancient barren region and restore the spiritual chi as you envisioned. This is because the spiritual veins have deteriorated. When the ancient desolate region was at its peak, it was not weaker than the firmament territory. In fact, the number and grade of the spiritual veins were not weaker than the firmament territory. However, the great battle 10,000 years ago almost destroyed half of the spiritual veins in the firmament territory, causing the ancient desolate region to sink. The spiritual veins are either broken or silent, and there is no longer any spiritual chi of heaven and earth escaping from them. This is the reason why the path of immortal skills in the ancient desolate region has become so difficult. However, if you want to restore the broken and silent spiritual veins, there is only one way, which is to activate the underground dragon veins in the ancient desolate region and restore the spiritual veins in the ancient desolate region. Underground dragon veins. Ziyue was stunned. Dark North Sect Master, you should know that the entire star boundary is divided into 4 territories. The Firmament Territory, the True Law Territory, the Sky Demon Territory, and the Ancient Desolate Region. The division of territories is not based on size or power. In fact, it is based on the underground dragon veins. There are 4 dragon veins in each of the 4 territories. For example, in the firmament territory, if there is a cultivator who can see the bottom of the firmament territory, he will find that many spiritual lands in the firmament territory are actually attached to a dragon vein. The dragon vein is stable and even healthy. Naturally, the spiritual chi in the firmament territory is endless, and it can continuously cultivate countless cultivators. However, the dragon veins in the ancient barren region were almost destroyed in the Great Battle 10,000 years ago. They were severely damaged. As a result, the dragon veins began to wither and fall into a deep slumber. Naturally, many of the spiritual veins in the ancient barren region fell in rank. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth was greatly reduced. Even the great Tao of heaven and earth was covered in dust and was no longer clear. The direct impact on immortal skill cultivators is that it is more difficult to achieve Tao and break through. Therefore, I am very impressed that Dark North Sect Master was able to break out of the ancient desolate region. As he spoke, Zhou Gutong did not forget to praise him, as if he was very impressed. Then how can the dragon vein be reactivated and restored? Ziyue hurriedly asked. There are two ways. The first way is to use great divine powers and powerful means to move mountains and fill seas, and reverse the great Yuan. The broken dragon vein in the entire ancient desolate region and the blocked spiritual chi and vital energy can be dredged one by one. In this way, the earth chi will be united and the dragon vein will be reconnected. Naturally, the dragon vein of the entire ancient desolate region will be restored. From then on, the spiritual chi will erupt and the creation will be born. The cultivator's cultivation will also be smooth, and there will be golden core realm, primordial soul realm, and even spirit severing realm experts. As for the second way, at this point, Zhou Gutong paused for a moment. He thought about the difficulty and knew that Bai Ziyue was not a reckless and crazy person. Finally, he said, the second method is to sever the dragon veins of other domains and plant them in the dragon veins of the ancient desolate region. In this way, the dragon vein in the ancient desolate region will be replenished by the other dragon veins, and it will naturally be restored and reborn. However, this method is to cut off the dragon vein in other regions and replenish one's own region. The impact is too far-reaching. Once you make a move, the entire region will see you as an enemy and will not rest until you are dead. Of course, those who can do this are at least spirit-severing realm experts. Ordinary cultivators will not be able to withstand the divine punishment of heaven and earth and the pursuit of the great Tao. There are two ways. The first is to sort out the earth chi and restore the dragon vein. The second is to cut off the dragon vein in other regions and restore the dragon vein in the ancient desolate region. Hearing this, Ziyue's expression changed slightly. He also felt the difficulty of this. With his strength, he was indeed able to accomplish the first method. However, the time required would definitely be incomparably huge. One had to know that when he was setting up the protective mountain array, it took him several days just to sort out the earth chi in the Five Peaks mountain. Not to mention the entire ancient desolate region, which was incomparably vast. He estimated that even if he spent 1,000 years, it would still be difficult to succeed. At least with his current strength, it would be extremely difficult for him to do so. As for the second type, it was needless to say. Those who could do this were all powerful cultivators at the spirit-severing stage and above. Even ultimate primordial soul stage cultivators would not be able to do this. With Ziyue's current strength, it was naturally impossible for him to do so. Not to mention cutting off the dragon vein, it would be difficult for him to even grasp the method of peering into the heavens and earth and find out the exact location of the dragon vein, let alone cut it off. Of course, even if he could really do it, he would be extremely cautious and would definitely not be so crazy. This was because the impact was too great. If he was not careful, it would cause billions of people to be plunged into misery and suffering. Compared to this, the backlash of the great Tao, the divine punishment of heaven and earth, and even the cultivators in the region who viewed him as an enemy, were nothing. Although Ziue was not a merciful person, he would definitely not do such a crazy thing for his own selfish reasons. Indeed, it is not so easy to restore the spiritual chi of the ancient barren region to its peak from 10,000 years ago. Ziue thought to himself, but he was not completely discouraged. He was currently only at the intermediate primordial soul realm, and his strength was relatively weak. It would naturally be extremely difficult for him to do so. However, he believed that when his cultivation reached the peak of the primordial soul realm, or even a step further and step into the spirit-severing realm, many problems that seemed impossible at the moment would naturally be solved. He was also confident that with his methods and the special ability of his attribute panel, he would definitely be able to increase his strength again in a short period of time. It would not be impossible for him to break through to the primordial soul realm, or even to the spirit-severing realm. Actually, restoring the dragon vein is the root of solving the problem of the ancient barren region. However, as far as I know, the number of living beings in the ancient barren region who are lucky enough to survive is actually extremely small. Most of them are gathered in the center of the ancient barren region. Therefore, you can completely increase the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the center of the ancient barren region. It was easy to do so. All they needed to do was to break the barrier that enveloped the ancient desolate region. In this way, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth from the outside world will flow into the ancient barren region, forming a spiritual chi tide that will naturally give birth to many fortunes. Of course, there is a price to pay. The barrier around the ancient barren region is very likely to have been left behind by the final victors of the immortal battlefield. It is almost connected to the entire ancient barren region. Even if I were to attack, it would probably be difficult to break it. Instead, it is very likely that I would suffer a backlash. Apart from that, if the formation was truly destroyed, it would be extremely dangerous. Of course, there will be a lot of spiritual chi in the surroundings that will form a spiritual chi tide that will benefit countless people. However, because of this, it will also attract many sea demons and great demons from the 100,000 mountains and the endless sea domain. The current ancient barren region will not be able to withstand the invasion of these existences. The people will be plunged into misery and suffering. Good intentions will lead to bad things. As he spoke, Zhou Gutong could not help but sigh. This is indeed a good idea, although there are some drawbacks. Ziue's eyes flickered as he thought of a solution. However, he quickly thanked Zhou Gutong and said solemnly, "Thank you, sect leader Zhou, for clearing my doubts. It's no problem. Even if I don't say these things with your strength, you can easily find out about them. It's nothing." Zhou Gutong waved his hand and did not take the credit. Then, Ziue asked about the ancient barren region, such as the barrier outside the 100,000 mountains, the strong winds in the astral wind canyon, and the special and strange environment in the endless sea domain. Although there were some things that even Zhou Gutong did not know much about, Ziue still learned a lot. As a result, he also had a certain understanding of many things in the ancient barren region. In the end, Ziue said meaningfully, "What does Brother Zhou know about the ancient barren battlefield?" "Ancient barren battlefield? You want to enter the ancient barren battlefield?" Zhou Gutong was stunned and asked in surprise. "If you want to solve the problem of the ancient barren region, you naturally can't avoid the ancient barren battlefield." Ziue smiled and said meaningfully, "That's true." Zhou Gutong nodded and then frowned. He said, "The ancient barren battlefield is definitely a dangerous place. It's the same even for extreme state experts like you and me. The outer and central areas are fine. Although there is a certain level of danger, it shouldn't be difficult for you to solve it with your strength. However, the most central area, the land of the fallen immortals, is extremely terrifying and dangerous. Even extreme state experts have the risk of dying if they enter it. The immortal evil chi that can invade almost everything is an existence that is a headache for any cultivator. Thus, even though everyone was extremely clear that there were definitely spirit treasures within the fallen immortal land, and there were even precious treasures left behind by fallen true immortals, practically no one dared to step into it. Another thing worth mentioning is that there was once a cultivator who was near the land of the fallen immortals and caught a glimpse of a cultivator wearing a simple robe. That cultivator had a strange appearance and a temperament that was completely different from the experts in the astral realm. His aura was vast and the immortal evil chi soared into the sky. He was definitely a spirit-severing stage existence that was above the primordial soul stage. It's very likely that he was one of the 7 true immortals back then. As he spoke, Zhou Gutong paused for a moment before continuing. That true immortal expert is an existence that can shatter an entire territory. Moreover, it's unknown whether he's an enemy or a friend. Once we encounter him, it's too dangerous. If possible, I advise you not to take risks so easily. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.